the beginning of the meeting here, and I think we just want to make sure we are up and going on all of our digital platforms. So give us 1 second.
You should be unmuted.
Perfect. All righty, I think we're ready to go, and I'm going to go on ahead and get started. What we are going to do today is walk through both the format of today's RCO meeting. So that'll be, give me 1 second, I think I have a delay here.
I apologize, Marin, but you're muted. You're gonna have to unmute yourself.
All right, I think we're ready to go now. Thanks, Felicity. As you all know, this is the development activities for the Lower Hill District for blocks G1 and G4. So welcome. We have lots to cover today. You will hear from the developers. We, as the RCO, will give you an introductory presentation, and let's go over just the agenda and then some house rules, and we'll jump into the content. We're going to try to get through a lot in a little bit of time so that you also have an opportunity to give input, ask questions, give comments. So we'll first, go through, the organization, Hill CDC. We'll talk a little bit about the RCO process. We'll give some background engagement with the developer. And then, of course, the developer will have their opportunity to present, and we will go into Q&A. Housekeeping rules, we will take limited Q&A after each agenda item. We will take your questions from any platform that we are on. So that's Zoom, Facebook Live, also YouTube, effective as of today. But we prefer that you drop them in Zoom and Facebook Live since this is our first YouTube streaming. If you want to ask your question live, please leave a note in the chat and we will unmute you at the appropriate time. You can send that to Felicity Williams, or you can raise your hand as well. And before you speak, please state whether or not you are a Hill District resident and or what your specific interest is. All righty. So a little bit about the Hill CDC. Today you will be hearing from me, Miranda, President and CEO of the Hill Community Development Corporation, and you will also be hearing from Felicity Williams, who's the Programs and Policy Manager, also my special assistant, really doing a lot of work on policy within the Hill District, and that means essentially making sure that our neighborhood master plan is honored. We are a place-based organization. In other words, we focus on the Hill District. We also oftentimes are advocating for equitable development throughout the city, but our work is really driven by making sure that the Hill District is protected. We are celebrating 33 years, and our mission is to work in partnership with residents and stakeholders to promote, implement strategies and programs to connect plans, policies, and people to drive compelling community development opportunities. Our focus areas are people, place, and policy. So we work to build up the people while we build up the place and we advocate for policy that assures the best outcome for all parties. We do real estate development work focused on the commercial core, meaning Center Avenue, as well as home ownership. We do economic development programs for businesses. We also, of course, as I mentioned, do home ownership preparation. And then art and culture as an economic driver is really important to us. And we work with community partners such as Arts in HD in that work. Lastly, but not least, and we say this is the work that always gets us in trouble, but it's good trouble, and that is the promotion of equitable development policy. So Felicity is going to tell you a little bit about the RCO process, and you can jump right in, Felicity.
Alrighty, thank you, Marimba. So it is our responsibility, and we would do this anyway, to talk to you guys a little bit about why you are here this evening and what this meeting is. So RCO, which stands for Registered Community Organizations, is a relatively newer regulatory process. It was established in an ordinance passed in 2018. What it did was create, as I said, this RCO status for community-based organizations. There are responsibilities for those community-based organizations as RCOs, and we are required to host these development activities meetings, and developers are required to participate in them. A developer is required to hold a development activities meeting, or DAM, and I will continue to say that I think someone at the City of Pittsburgh had a really sick sense of humor, because now we can all say we have to go to the DAM meeting. So they created, a developer has to hold a DAM at least 30 days prior to a public hearing for a list of qualifying reasons. So I'm simplifying some of this legislation here for you all tuning in tonight. There's a list of qualifying reasons. This project, the Block G1 and Block G4 project, qualifies under that list. Generally, as a rule of thumb, you can look at it as if a project has to have a planning commission hearing, a zoning board of adjustments hearing, a historic review commission hearing, hearings by public boards. They generally have to go through one of these meetings. The Hill CDC is the RCO for the Greater Hill District. So this project is included in that geographic boundary, as the Lower Hill is part of the Hill District. So what is the DRP? So the DRP is the Hill District's unified community review process. It is comprehensive and it is democratic. It really truly gives every single resident in the Hill District a voice in the development of their neighborhood. And you'll see it is a membership of the organizations at the top of the screen. There are several steps to this process. So you have a panel of residents that are appointed by those 6 organizations at the top of your screen, as well as many of you are familiar with having attended in person or virtually a community meeting in which you got a scorecard. We had our meeting box. You guys dropped them off when we were in person, folded them up. That is the community meeting portion of that. So it's 2 parts, panel of residents plus a community meeting, and that equals our community input. One of the things that's really important about this process, again, is that a lot of this information, all of this information is available to you ahead of time. It is a very transparent process. So you will see, if you go to hilldistrict.org/DRP, those little orange buttons that you're seeing on the left side of your screen there, approved projects, under review, or declined projects. You can click on those and go and view now any of the projects that are currently in the process, that have previously been approved or have been declined. And on the right side of your screen right there, you're seeing some examples of projects on that webpage. And you can go up and read any of the documents that are uploaded as part of this process, except for financial sources and uses, because we know those can be kind of sensitive. But it really allows you to be hands-on, read through a timeline of what's happening with the project, read all the documents, get the information that you want to get about what's happening in your neighborhood before a project comes to you in a public community meeting. So why did I just talk to you about the DRP and when I was talking about the RCO process? Because the Hill District had the development review panel. It predated the RCO process. As I mentioned, this is a relatively newer regulatory process. What we did is, as I said, the Hill District development review panel is obviously much more comprehensive than the RCO process. So what we did was we have integrated the 2 processes. The ordinance for RCO, in addition, remember I mentioned to you guys a few minutes ago that it requires the RCO to do have certain responsibilities. You'll see some of that listed here on the screen, the text in italics. So we are required as the RCO to establish orderly and democratic means for forming representative public input, and a clear method for reporting to the city actions which accurately reflect the community's position. As such, again, as I said, you guys, that sounds a lot like our DRP process, right? So we just kept our community's DRP process, what we're all familiar with, and we integrated the two. In fact, we wrote the DRP process into our RCO application. So the DRP is our orderly and democratic means, and it's our clear method for reporting to the city. However, it's important to note, this project has not successfully completed the first step of that process. This is not the normal process where a project should be coming to you all tonight, because it has not received a passing score at the DRP committee level. The issue here, however, is that the RCO ordinance, once a developer makes a request, we are legally forced to schedule this meeting. So that's why you all are here this evening. And so, of course, as part of that DRP process, we have requested that the development team continue to work with us to gain better alignment with their community plans, but they requested that they have this meeting tonight. And so that's why we are here before you.
Felicity, are there any technical questions that we should take right now, or would you like to do that at the next part of the agenda?
I'm free to take any questions that people have at this time about, just the items I just covered here, the RCO process and the DRP, because I think it's important for you all to understand, what is happening here at this meeting. I think it's also important for you all to understand that we are joined by city planning, who will be recording all comments, all questions that you all make tonight, and that record is uploaded publicly. It is also submitted to the agency that the development team is seeking approval from. So in this particular instance, it is the Planning Commission. The development team is seeking approval for their final land development plan from the Planning Commission. So I wanted to also add that note in there for you all as well. So it's good to take questions on this process so everyone understands what's going on, what you're doing here. And why yes. Hold on one second, we'll take one at a time. Go ahead, Tyan, and then Mr. Douglas will get to you.
Thank you. Are we voting tonight on this project?
Tyan, so we are not voting tonight because it has not successfully completed the DRP committee process. As I said, this is out of order. This is not following our regular process. The development team insisted on coming before you all tonight, insisted on having this meeting. And so we're legally required to hold it once they request it under the RCO ordinance.
Okay, and then my next question would be, if the community, let's just say, is in favor of this project, they would have to vote once the DRP is approved? Because I know the DRP is the first step before the community, right?
Correct.
So if the community is on this meeting tonight, I'm just trying to figure out
the next steps. Yes. So I'll tie that answer in here with a question we received in the chat. So Amber had asked, if they requested it, how does this impact the next steps? How will these comments be implemented in the Planning Commission? So I'll tie the two together, Tanya, because they kind of go together. So of course, we have still asked the development team to continue to work with us on the project, despite not receiving the passing score at the DRP committee level. That is standard process for a project coming through the development review panel. You continue to refine your project. You continue to align your project until it receives an 80% or higher, and then it will go on to another public community meeting. Unfortunately, as I said, the development team requested that we have this meeting tonight, so we are legally required to hold it. Now, to answer Amber's question about how these comments will be implemented in the Planning Commission, I can't say how they will be implemented. It will be up to the Planning Commission to the members that are on that board, to thoroughly review the comments and what they receive from this meeting tonight, as well as any other public input and comments when they go to make their decision.
Understood. So my final question, and I apologize, but if the Planning Commission finds this presentation to be sufficient and they move forward, then will that overrule the DRP process?
Well, we never believe that the DRP process is overruled, and there are still several more because we want developers to be good community partners. And as good community partners, they would want to receive a successful score from the DRP process. That being said, there will be other approvals down the road that this development team must seek as well before they can actually move forward with their development. So the Planning Commission is just one of the first steps in seeking those other approvals.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then we heard we get this question a lot about the DRP, and I've answered this at many meetings, but feel free to go to hilldistrict.org/DRP. All of your information is there. As I said, each of those organizations appoints residents to the development review panel. Feel free to reach out to any of those organizations if you want to learn more about their appointments. If you're interested in being one of their appointments when it comes time to renew an appointment, please continue to get engaged. That's one of the best things about the DRP is that it's actual residents getting to have a voice. Every single resident gets a vote. It's a democratic process. And so that's what we really love about it, that you got the checks and the balances with the DRP committee, plus every resident at a public community meeting. All right, Marimba, I think we're ready to move forward. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Douglas, I didn't take your question. I'm so sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to understand what is the reason why the development team is not really following this process. Is there anything that has surfaced, any compelling reason that has surfaced that says, you know, this is why we are not really following the process to the law? That's just my question.
So what the development team has expressed to us is that based on their timeline, they need to move forward with the project. And so that is why they requested this meeting. They can't go to a planning commission hearing until 30 days after one of these meetings has happened. And so based on the timeline they have set for themselves and the project, they wanted to have a meeting now.
So how are they going to satisfy you guys that they are truly following the Hill District plan for integration of residents in this project and not a bunch of outsiders?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the question at hand. You know, we're following the law, right? By doing what we're supposed to do as a registered community organization is scheduling the meeting. And they are utilizing the law to advance the plan at the speed that they feel appropriate. And for all intents and purposes, you know, the development review panel and Felicity, or I will cover this later, you know, has ranked this and has asked for the development team to stay within the process to increase alignment. But they have opted to proceed nonetheless. Hopefully, you know, there's a change of heart there, but, you know, that is out of our control. Obviously, there has to be a planning commission meeting where there's public input. It will not be as accessible just by virtue of the fact that, you know, it's not the Hill District neighborhood that's holding it. People just aren't as familiar with connecting with regulatory bodies to do that kind of thing. You know, our hope is that we can figure out a way to get this plan in alignment before it even goes before the planning commission, but it is going to take some work.
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal. And I just wanted to reiterate, I'm going to move us forward here because I think some of the questions that you guys have, Marimba's going to answer in a minute. She's going to go through what the current scores are for the projects and walk through what the process has been over the last 10 months. One of the other things we're required to do at these meetings is to cover the engagement with the developer. So Marimba is going to go over that in a second, but just as you all set the standard, 80% is required at the DRP level, at both the DRP committee and when you all score them at a public community meeting. And reason being, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there for 1 second. Reason being that we want to see quality development that is sufficiently aligned with our community goals. So I've said this before, I'll say it again. C's do not get degrees in the Hill District. You got to get a B average. So that's where we are.
All righty, let's proceed. I'm going to start off with a little bit of context for everybody, a little bit of the history. The hill we climb. If you've come to our last couple of community meetings, we've been using this as a theme because we think that it so appropriately addresses the moment we're in. This is Amanda Gorman, the inaugural poet. You all probably remember her and her amazing poem that reminded us that being American is more than the pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. And so this project, The Hill We Climb, is one that really is a quintessential example of what that is meant, what is meant by that. So we remind you that in 1943, Councilman George Evans reasoned that public and private redevelopment could provide significant employment to returning war veterans while ameliorating what he saw as an area beset with deterioration and urban blight. Of course, that was the Hill District. The Hill District of Pittsburgh is probably one of the most outstanding examples in Pittsburgh of neighborhood deterioration. Approximately 90% of the buildings in the area are substandard and have long outlived their usefulness. And so there would be no social loss if they were all destroyed. This is the Pittsburgh City Councilman. This is George Evans, who was the city councilman at that time. He also served as the leader of the Pittsburgh Housing Authority for many years. But this was the sentiment. Not just here in the Hill District, but throughout the country. Between 1949 and 1973, the United States bulldozed 2,500 neighborhoods. The Hill District was one of them. That was 993 American cities and neighborhoods that suffered that fate. 1 million people were dispossessed of their land, mostly were Black residents. In the Hill District, this is the plan that was proposed by the Urban Redevelopment Authority. This is the actual flyer that was put out of residential and commercial sites available for development. And this was the actual Lower Hill District. You can see how densely populated it was, and you can see in comparison when the Civic Arena was built, exactly how much demolition had to take place. Now, today we talk about the Lower Hill District in the context of 28 acres, but the entire demolition of the Lower Hill District at that time was over 100 acres. So keep in mind that we only have a fraction of what remains in our neighborhood. Mayor Lawrence and Allegheny Conference of Community Development and the Urban Redevelopment Authority all saw the historically Black neighborhood as being in the way of potential new housing, office space, and hotels. The Civic Arena was officially added to the URA's Lower Hill Plan in 1952 after an earlier site for the auditorium in Highland Park was met with strong resistance from affluent residents. This was the plan. You all can see here that this is the Civic Arena site, and you see this building. It probably looks a little bit familiar because this is Washington Plaza, now City View. The rest of those buildings never got built. I do want you to pay attention to Epiphany Church, though, which remains standing to this day. But fortunately, the Hill District neighborhood was able to prevent the demolition of the entire Hill District. Many Black leaders were in support of the demolition. I think it's really important for us to recognize that at that time, there were so many Black leaders who believed that the city really would deliver on their promises of affordable housing on the Lower Hill District. They were in support of the demolition. They had been asking the city for many, many years to invest in the Hill District. Their support of the redevelopment hinged on their belief that housing for the displaced would be built on the site, and that construction companies would hire Hill District workers and build affordable replacement housing. In Pittsburgh, City Council formally approved the Hill Clearance Plan. In May of 1955, when the minister and members of Bethel AME Church on Logan Avenue, the oldest in Black Pittsburgh, and frankly, the oldest on this side of the Allegheny Mountains, learned that their church was slated for destruction, they appealed repeatedly for a reprieve, but the URA rebuffed them, offering only to find another home for the church at a, quote, reasonable fee. This was Bethel AME Church. There are so many people around, even to this day, who attended Bethel AME. It's not them, their family members. It was, as many still call it, and as it will always be, Mother Bethel. And this was Mother Bethel during the demolition of the Lower Hill. We use this as an example to show not just the insensitivity, the trauma, the catastrophic nature of the demolition, but also the scale of the demolition, right? This is one building on one block that was demolished. And this up close view really gives you a sense of the amount of demolition that occurred in that entire 100-acre site. Now, the 28 acres that we continue to deal with, we have an opportunity to rebuild in the right way. The demolition of the Lower Hill displaced more than 8,000 residents, overwhelmingly Black, and demolished over 1,300 buildings. I should say it also removed 400 businesses from our neighborhood. Fortunately, as is always the case, the Hill District has a very strong sense of self and a spirit of self-determination. So residents came together and organizations came together and they said, attention City Hall and URA, no redevelopment beyond this point. We demand low-income housing for the Lower Hill. This billboard was erected at Center in Crawford, right across from St. Benedict the Moor, which you see here. It's now Freedom Corner. So we carry that legacy on even to this day of remembrance and honoring the work that was done in the past to create this very opportunity for us to reimagine a different outcome for our community. Once the Lower Hill was completely demolished, the only buildings ever erected were the Civic Arena in approximately 1961, originally slated to be the new home of the Civic Light Opera, and one apartment building that I just showed you, which is currently known as City View. The rest of the site remained largely parking over the last 5 decades. The jobs and housing for displaced residents never came. And we know that this building was just demolished not too long ago. I share this picture with you because this is the current Bethel AME Church, okay? This isn't even the first location that they landed at after the demolition. I believe this is the third. But, you know, I think that this is just such a great quintessential example, an unfortunate, sad, and traumatic example, but an excellent example of the amount of wealth that the Hill District has lost over the decades, the land that the Hill District has lost over the decades, and in some cases, the hope that we can do better, that we can still reclaim our neighborhood, that we can build upon the master plan that we have envisioned for ourselves. And in 2006, let's fast forward. In 2006, after a failed bid to build a casino on the Lower Hill, the Penguins threatened to leave Pittsburgh if they didn't get a new arena. The mayor, the county executive, and governor at the time signed an option agreement in 2007 with the Pens that resulted in a $290 million arena paid with tax dollars. And the development rights to the Lower Hill were also given to the Pens. The Penguins later revealed that their threat was a bluff. In other words, they never planned to leave. They just wanted the development rights. A community benefits agreement was signed in 2014 to ensure that the Lower Hill District could be restored, that the Hill District, could be restored as the Lower Hill District is developed. That's what the community benefits agreement did. Now that the Lower Hill District development is taking off, it's time to make sure that the entire Hill District gets developed, not just the Lower Hill District. All right, here's the community benefits agreement. So we had 2 community benefits agreements. One that was specifically focused on the PPG Paints Arena, which was then Console, and a second that was focused on the redevelopment of the Lower Hill District. You can see that Travis Williams, who was with the Pens, signed, Councilman Lavelle, I signed, County Executive Fitzgerald, and Mayor Peduto signed this community benefits agreement called the Community Collaboration and Implementation Plan in September of 2014. This plan that was signed by these parties, the Hill CDC and the advocates at the time, advocated for this plan to be included in the city's regulatory process so that any future plans that come forward, that the city would say, are you meeting the community benefits agreement or not, before they actually advance the plan? Well, they refused to attach it because the developer essentially advocated against it being attached. So we filed an appeal in the Court of Common Pleas, and we were able to get a $40 million LRTA for the community. We were able to get a commitment for some compliance for the CSIP, and we were able to launch the Affordable Housing Task Force that is now known as the Housing Opportunity Fund, that the entire city is able to take advantage of. So just that context alone, hopefully, excuse me, I'm having a problem. Okay, advancing. Gives you a little bit of understanding of this moment that we're in and why these 7 focus areas that you see on the screen: minority and women business inclusion, job creation, local inclusion and workforce development, inclusionary and home ownership housing programs, communications, reporting and tracking, wealth building initiatives, cultural and community legacy initiatives, and coordinated community development are so important. We signed an agreement We want to fulfill that agreement. We don't want to fulfill part of that agreement. We want to fulfill that entire agreement. And this, quite frankly, is the moment. This is the launching point to decide whether or not we will be able to fulfill that agreement. Now let's talk about why this moment is so important. As of right now, there are 3 parts of the site that are already in the takedown request process. What does that mean? They have already started to request to take full ownership of these sites that you see circled in red. If this happens without sufficient community commitments being fulfilled, where does that leave us as a community? To just get our community benefits on the remaining parcels that in most cases are less density. So it's really important that in this moment where we are dealing with the most dense site, the most dense project, and the greatest commercial return to our neighborhood, that we deal with the community reinvestment that was committed in the community benefits plan. So where are we on a spectrum of justice? I meet with the Pittsburgh Penguins and the mayor's office and city council, Men Lavelle and the URA and the SEA and the other appointees of the executive management committee every other week, have for years, okay? Struggling to get this plan met. And for all intents and purposes, we've seen the most activity over the past 2 months. And where we are in terms of the spectrum of justice is between injury and insult, right? So we're not even at respect, we're definitely not at repair, and we're certainly not at justice. The reason why we are between injury and insult is because we recognize that there is some attempt to, to do something. But without properly making the reinvestments now, it will injure our community. There's no question. We will not have sufficient capital to offset the rampant market forces that are bound to come. And be clear, I am more eager to see the Hill District develop probably than anyone. But we have to make sure that we do it in a way that does not wash away the residents of our community, that does not sweep away the culture of our neighborhood. It must be done. And so let's talk again about the hill we climb. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. And the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. Here are the themes of accountability, the themes that we are seeing as we walk through this process. What we're trying to do is kind of boil down in a finite amount of time what the high level challenges are that we hope to be able to solve. Missing accountability, unmet promises, meeting the community collaboration and implementation plan, making sure that for each block, you saw how the blocks were named, that for each block that we have an agreed upon plan and that's signed by all parties that says, hey, for this block, this is what we're going to do that aligns with the community benefits agreement. The census tract boundary change really raises the bar for community returns. There's considerable racial inequity in the public investment. Public dollars are not reinvestment from the development team. And so it's really important to recognize that a lot of times the public dollars that you're hearing about coming back to the project are tax dollars that would otherwise be going to other public needs. We want to see the bank investments to not be a double counting of the community reinvestment investments that have already been made in our community. Many of you know that banks operate under the Community Reinvestment Act, and they are especially focused on investing in communities because of the history of redlining. We want them to invest what they've done, and we want to make sure that the investments that are forthcoming align with the scale of the development of the $250 million development that's happening. We want an investment in buildings and people. We think that the investments in people right now are falling considerably short, really overly focused on construction jobs and overly focused on things like pop-up retail. And of course, we want to emphasize that public space that is privately owned, green space, I should say, that is privately owned is not really community reinvestment, because that green space can be taken away in a flash if it's privately owned. So it's really important to own that. So here are the parties involved: the Executive Management Committee, the Sports and Exhibition Authority. They own the land with the URA. The Development Review Panel, which Felicity talked about, our community review process. The RCO, that's our organization. We are the Registered Community Organization, and that is a part of the Planning Commission's regulatory process. And then, of course, elected officials, which have political power, influence, decision-making on and approval on boards. Here's a quick snapshot of the land ownership. You can see that most of the land is owned by the Sports and Exhibition Authority, and a portion of it up top by Crawford Street is owned by the URA. The URA and the Sports and Exhibition Authority have a cooperation agreement where they generally will release land at the same time, even though the ownership is not always overlapping. So that's important for you to know. Who's on the Executive Management Committee, the governing body of the CSIP? The voting body is made up of 3 co-chairs, Councilman LaBelle, the mayor's office, and the PINs, and 2 appointees from each body. As you can see, there is significant government representation and private industry representation on this committee, but perhaps not sufficient community representation. So I think that this is one of the challenges that we're experiencing on a week-to-week basis. It meets every 2 weeks, as I mentioned, and other attendees include public partners like the URA, the SEA, CSIP project administrator, the mayor's office, and organizational staff. Number 2, in terms of themes, unmet promises. Okay, so I share this with you to refresh your memory that back in October of 2019, you probably read an article about the community showing at the URA board meeting and saying, please don't convey these takedown rights without having sufficient community benefit. At which point we were met with a very savvy presentation that told us that the community benefits are considerable. One of which was the Ammon Recreation and Rehab Center, okay? Well, the Ammon Recreation Center, I'll say, and a rehab for that center. There was a commitment of $1 million. How much has Ammon received? $50,000 from the Penguins development arm and $50,000 from F&B. So we're about $900,000 short on that commitment. The Hill District Workforce Center. There was a commitment to locate a Hill District Workforce Center in the Hill House. There were conversations that happened months ago between the URA and PAR and Puccini Polling Group. And for all intents and purposes, those conversations stalled when a neighbor started a workforce center and they were thinking about just doing it there. The initial conversation was that there would be over 5,000 square feet of space leased. We are now down to maybe 700 after the developer has come back to the table. The curtain call. We've been talking about the curtain call for years. You all know this. I probably don't even need to talk about the curtain call in detail. But the curtain call is an arts and sustainability project that was supposed to be next to the PPG Paints Arena that really documented the history, life, and vibrancy of the Hill District neighborhood. The curtain call has still not gotten the capital commitment necessary to be fulfilled, and it has also not been started. And in fact, there has been an idea that we should just move the curtain call up to a different site altogether and spend more money to plan the curtain call project. So that remains a concern. Developers committed to work with Macedonia on their need to expand. Okay, so this is Macedonia Baptist Church. Macedonia has been growing for the past many years and has been looking to expand. There was a commitment by the development team to work with them on the Ammon commitment so that they could rightfully expand where they have been since 1927. There was also a commitment by the developers to help with the New Granada Theater development, specifically making sure that as they stand up a new music venue on the Lower Hill, that there's some alignment with the New Granada, and that parties work together to make sure that both venues are enlivened. That has not happened. They have not met the CSIP. Okay, so the plan has, at the Greater Hill District Master Plan level, received a C, that's 75%, and they've received a D, that's the Community Collaboration and Implementation Plan, where they're supposed to be meeting the Community Benefits Agreement, okay? This is the timeline. Back in May of 2020, the DRP gave feedback to the development team saying, hey, you know, here are the things we think you can do to improve. The development team did not come back with any improvements. And then in November of 2020, they re-engaged the DRP. That's just this past November, okay, right before Christmas. And then in January of 2021, they did come back and they submitted and failed a second time to meet requests. They submitted and failed a second time to meet requests, and they have not demonstrated sufficient improvement. Now we are at February 2021, and the developers have met with the DRP to address their challenges and barriers to meeting requests. They have submitted new documents 1 week later and insisted on being invited to present. And that's why we're here tonight. Not because we wanted to hold the meeting, but because the developers insisted that they must do this public meeting as a part of their regulatory process because they are ready to move forward. We, Hill CDC, as well as the Development Review Panel, urged them to not move forward until there was greater alignment. The DRP's response was that there seemed to be certain urgency, certain sense of urgency, and that they are still falling short as of March. So as of March, meaning I think over the past couple of days, this is their latest score. Alignment with the Greater Hill District Master Plan, you can see, is even lower. The CSIP is lower, and for Block G4 and Block for the CSIP is F, and for the Greater Hill District Master Plan is an E. Now, part of this, again, is because it's been rushed. There's not been sufficient time to sit down, you know, figure out how to align, and this was, again, by their choice. And so, so you are going to have an opportunity to hear from the developers when the DRP pulled back the layers of the promises made. They also came to learn the opportunity zone issue had come up, where essentially the boundaries of our community census tract were changed. It raised the bar. And so there are a number of things that impacted that score. As is always the case, our hope is to re-engage the developer, help to find alignment, and then move the project forward and back to you when appropriate. According to the CSIP, also, the funding streams for the neighborhood will be partially be placed in the Greater Hill Reinvestment Fund. Some funding streams that are listed in the Community Collaboration Plan are shared parking revenue, shared ticket sales, and more. To date, the community has only received a commitment to tax money, which is the LRTA fund. So the development team is now saying that despite receiving millions in public funding for parking complexes and garages and a garage, that they are too expensive to build and they can't share revenue. They have offered no ongoing revenue for the Hill District neighborhood as we struggle to build our neighborhood with over 600 acres of vacant land in our neighborhood. Okay, so let's talk a little bit quickly about Block G4. Block G4 is here, Block G1 is here, okay? I think it's important to note that despite the lack of alignment and progress on Block G1, no submission to the DRP for Block G4 came from the development team, which makes it almost impossible to score. So that is a concern, obviously. The dam is a newer regulatory requirement. Before going to planning and getting city approval, we need to have that submission. And of course, we are legally required to schedule this meeting, and you see that it was advertised as Block G4 and Block G1. Lastly, I want to point out that there is no signed agreement. As I mentioned, we want to see a signed agreement for each block as it proceeds. We want a block by block strategy so that the developer, so that the community, so that all parties are clear. For Block G1, what's supposed to happen? For Block G4, what's supposed to happen? For E, what's supposed to happen? Take the guessing game out of it. I think our community has suffered enough and not had sufficient protection, and we just want to protect by having our ducks in order. The EMC, just to be clear, did propose a counter proposal back in May of 2020 when the Penns presented their plan to the URA. And the developer just was non-responsive largely. And then ultimately, we did just receive some feedback last week saying, this is what we're going to be moving forward on. We be open to signing. So I want to recognize progress where there is some, but obviously there's not sufficient time. Let's get to the census tract change. Many of you may know that the Hill District has many census tracts, one of which includes Crawford Roberts up to DeVilliers Street, okay? Under the Trump administration, there was there is an initiative called the Opportunity Zone incentive, where opportunity zones were designated all throughout the country by the governor. They picked the opportunity zones that they wanted to see selected for part of this program, okay? These could possibly be decent with the appropriate measures in place. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So what we learned just last month was that the development team lobbied the city lobbied the state lobbied the feds to change the census tract for the Lower Hill District, moving it out of the downtown census tract and into a Middle Hill District census tract with no community input, with no community engagement. Obviously, this was very upsetting since I, as well as a number of other stakeholders, meet with the development team every 2 weeks. No mention of it over the past 2 years. Okay, so now the development is able to receive unlimited funding from the wealthiest across the country looking for a tax shelter. Okay, this also means that our low to moderate income designation for that census tract 305, is at risk, because as soon as the Lower Hill starts to get developed, it's going to push the incomes up for the area at Crawford Square, as well as the area all the way up to New Granada. Okay, so it's not just Crawford Square, which we know is largely developed, but all of that area up is also going to possibly be forced out of the low to moderate income census tract faster than it would have naturally been. And of course, new residents and development will drive up the area median income. Now, opportunity zones are, as I mentioned, tax shelters for the wealthy. So it's essentially, in lieu of paying your capital gains tax, you can put your money in a real estate project or a business to invest and to see if you can get your money to grow, okay? The Hill District advocated, Hill CDC specifically, advocated for a census tract inclusion. However, we also advocated for legislation to protect the interests of the neighborhood, okay? Hill CDC advocated also for the Upper Hill to be included, and it was left out. Here are some things that we are concerned about for the opportunity zone designation: gentrification and displacement. Why? Because there's no federal guidance or local guidance or state guidance to say that if you are going to invest opportunity zone funds, that you also must do A, B, and C to assure an equitable outcome, okay? So again, that's Pittsburgh, nor Pennsylvania have any legislation, and that's the federal government also, although there is some guidance coming out, and we want to see more protections. So what's this question about racial inequity, okay, relative to investments? So the RACP award, which is a redevelopment capital assistance program for the state, comes out every year. It is some of the most competitive state money that you can get, and it's some of the largest investment that you can get, all right? Last year, we saw several Hill District projects pursuing funding from the RACP grant. Here's what was requested in the left column here. City's Edge requested $3 million, Fifth and Dinwiddie requested $6 million, the Lower Hill Block E, that's the URA, requested $3 million, PAR requested $4 million, F&B Tower requested $15 million, and this is how much they were awarded, okay? And so, as you can see, again, we're talking about more state money, we're talking about more tax money, and we understand that projects of scale oftentimes need to get this kind of investment. Our issue is that the Lower Hill got 100% on 2 of their applications, 40% on another, whereas the MBEs got 8.28% and 40%, and then 2 other projects in the Hill District got nothing, right? And so what we're looking for is more overinvestment in the area of the neighborhood that needs it the most, okay? They also applied for an economic development administration grant, as well as, and are pursuing other grants as well. So what we want to see are public dollars that are not just investments from our tax money, but also investments from the actual private developers. I'm going to go on ahead and wrap up because I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to hear fully from the developers, and this leaves them, I believe, just over an hour. I can't see my clock here, but so here's some of what you might see. You might see some marketing, right? And combining benefits of Block E, Block G1, and Block 4. Block G4. So be sure to mark down the benefits for each block, okay? You might see some phrases around trust and, it's time to get started, a lot of motivation and energy on, feeling good about having, MBEs participated, it's time to go to work, those kinds of things, you'll hear that, right? And it's true, right? It is time for us to go to work. But if we don't have the proper accountabilities in place, we will think we're going to work and we will not be going to work, okay? Verbal promises, we want to see verbal promises and leveraging of relationships and community members. And, I've learned through many years of doing community development that, community development can be really tough. It's a close enough personal sport. And, I try to remind everybody, this doesn't have to be personal. It can just be about the community. All right. But, right now there's a lot of confusion because we see a lot of trusted community members in different roles. And so just be mindful that our job as the community is to really just assure that the community is getting what it needs, what is deserved, and most importantly, what the development team committed to, which so far they have not delivered on.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of developers, you'll see a lot of dollar signs, You're gonna see a lot of dollar signs, right? Which is good. But do they meet the CSIP? Are we going to get long-term investment in real estate and people? Who controls the money? Are these Hill District organizations or not? How does it compare to public dollars invested and the free land that was received on the lower hill? So what are the terms? Examine critically about the terms that are used, the commitments that are made. It's going to be hard to keep track. That's why we shared the map for you so you can see the block by block strategy. So get really clear about what's happening on each block. And then no alignment with the commitments, with the specific action items for the CSIP. And then ultimately what we want to see is that developers come back when they're ready to meet the commitments made to the Hill District. Our process is really not to blow up the plan. We want to see development too, but it's got to be right. And if it's not right, it needs to come back. Okay, with that, I'm going to invite the presenters for the Lower Hill Block G1 and Block G4 presentation. So if you would unmute yourself. And
Just 1 second, Miranda.
Okay.
Just want to make sure that I covered for everybody what was about to happen here over the rest of our time. The development team has 20 minutes, which I will be timing here to cover their presentation with you all this evening. This is standard for anyone that has previously attended one of our community meetings. You all will then have 20 minutes of Q&A for the development team as well. So just want to go over that, and I will provide in the chat updates to everyone as we count down those 20 minutes. On the development team side. So just wanted to cover that. If we could go ahead and bring up who will be next or who's starting, excuse me, the development team presentation. And then, as I said, that will leave us with an additional 20 minutes at the end to take all questions that folks may have.
Hey, Felicity, before they get started,
Yes.
will they have additional time at another community meeting? Because I think 20 minutes is not a lot of time for a developer to really, present to the community and get questions answered that residents might have.
So the 20 minutes is our standard process that we've been doing for at least 4 to 5 years. So most developers are able to cover their presentation in that 20 minutes. That being said, we are able to be a little bit flexible on time. They know coming through some of our DRP meeting presentations, I'm generous on time to make sure that we get community questions answered. In addition, as we said earlier, they will have to come to another community meeting once they successfully pass the DRP committee level. So that is another opportunity for them to come forward as well. up first from the development team? Are you having issues unmuting yourself?
I'm up first. Can you all hear me?
I was gonna say, there you go. I was gonna say you have an echo going. I want to make sure everyone was able to unmute themselves. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Oh, hold on, wait. We're still getting a mute. Let me see. Do you know what line that is, Bomani? Oh. Hold on one second. Let me mute everybody, and then Bomani, you can unmute yourself. How about that? All right, Bomani, please go ahead and try to unmute yourself now. Everyone else is muted.
Okay, can you all hear me now?
No, the feedback's coming on your end, unfortunately.
All right, how about now?
Turn down your computer audio.
Yeah.
He may have too many monitors on by him. He needs to turn every monitor off except one.
Yeah, Bomani, you might have to turn off every other line that you have. If they're watching the presentation too and they're connected to you, there's going to be feedback, unfortunately.
Everybody else in the room should go and shut off their speaker.
There you go, Kevin.
Sorry, thank you, Felicity.
You're welcome. Thanks, Kevin.
So now, Bomani, if you unmute yourself.
I think you should be good now. Let's test it out. Third time's a charm.
Right. Hello? More echo.
There's still an echo. That's so weird.
So when I mute myself on my computer,
There are still
Hello,
people
hello?
that are not. There's still people that are not unmuted.
is everyone else muted? How about now?
Yay, I think success.
Okay, all right. Sorry for the technical difficulties. By now in this pandemic, we should be used to, we should be able to jump right into our Zoom. I'm really happy about our presentation tonight. My name is Bomani House. Most of you may know me from years of my involvement in community economic development, particularly with the Hill and around the cities that, neighborhoods that have been striving to be revitalized. In my current role on this project in the Lower Hill, as a result of many negotiations and really making sure that we are on the right footing with regard to this Lower Hill development, I came on board with Puccini Polling Group 2 months ago. And I am the Vice President of Development for the Greater Pittsburgh area. And I am proud and pleased to present the hard work that we have been pushing forward. We are tasked with building the first national bank commercial tower. It's a 26-story tower. And it will be one of the first catalytic projects, a long-awaited project for revitalization. And we're going to demonstrate tonight our plans to make sure that there is coordinated community development, so that as we develop in the Lower Hill, we're going to also push to make sure that revitalization dollars are going into the Middle and Upper Hill. I want to begin by saying my comments are deeply rooted in this neighborhood that I love. I'm born and raised in the Hill, third generation. My grandparents, when they came up from the South, settled in the Lower Hill district, so it's a very personal journey for me on this project. I'm born and raised 152 Reed Roberts Place, 6E. So I'm in the heart of this community. I know the pain of poverty, and I've committed my life towards making sure that others have pathways out of poverty. And I believe that this project is one that can provide a very positive uplift for our neighborhood. So I want to jump into a couple of thoughts about our team here. There have been comments earlier about trusting, and you'll see some trusted faces. And this is not only a team of trusted persons or just believing in a project. We're talking about engaging community to make sure that we collectively become a part of a force that is about good stewardship of our neighborhood. And so you're going to see some of those members tonight. I've had a chance to scroll through some of the people who are tuned in. We have about 200 people, and I'm glad we have that many. There are people who are zooming in to listen for opportunity, positivity, and uplift to see that we're moving in a forward direction for our neighborhood. I'm going to present some people and some ideas. This is not a perfect plan, but it is a plan that we believe is going to be powerful, and it's an iterative plan. I've been involved with this process since 2005. For a very long time, I've been engaged in the development of the Community Collaborative Implementation Plan. And so I'm very in tune with all of those principles. To get to here with me, that good steward team, we have around the table with me, we have I'd say around the table, Dr. Kimberly Ellis, who is one of our most trusted historians, who is going to speak to us about the history and cultural infusion of that will be implemented into the project. We also have Howard Graves, who is from the Hill. We wanted to make sure that we had some Black architects who could help inform us on the design elements. Lakeisha Bird, who is also an upcoming architect involved in our process. We have Vaki Mwema, who is with Gensler, Peter Stubb, who's also with Gensler, Lisa Dugan, who's from Up Studio Landscapes, and Amici Aka from Clay Cove Capital. He's here with us. I'm gonna put an asterisk next to his mark because a lot of these projects don't start unless you have capital. And so when we're talking about ownership of projects, we have a Black equity investor who understands these type projects, and I'm glad to have him as a partner with us as well. We also have the principal of the Puccini Polling Group, Chris Puccini. Oftentimes you don't see the CEOs diving into these community conversations, but he's been here along the way. So I want to dive into how we move to honor and repair our neighborhood. Redlining has hit our neighborhood hard, and I don't think we have anybody better than Dr. Kimberly Ellis, who can help us reflect and then go forward with our plan. Dr. Ellis?
Thank you so much, Bomani. Well, family, you heard what Bomani said, and I'm just gonna jump in because you all know me, and I wouldn't be here if I didn't trust what was happening.
We can't hear you.
Huh? I'm unmuted.
We can't hear you.
I can hear her on my end, Bomani.
Let's make sure we can hear you before you begin.
No, I'm not muted. Let me.
We can hear. We can
hear her.
We can hear.
We can all hear her.
Okay, so Bomani, it's you that can't hear me. Okay. Bomani, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Kim, for the sake of time, I think you should continue.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
can
I just
hear you.
wanted to make sure. Okay, so it's time to tell a new story about Pittsburgh, family. So I want to share some history that is usually not covered. One is about the early Lower Hill. So I want to read this quote. It says, about 12 years ago, there were not more than about 8 or 10 houses on the entire hill in the district of those two villages, and they were the farmhouses and cottages of those who supplied the Pittsburgh markets with the products of their gardens and orchards. Now we could scarcely begin to enumerate the tenements, many of which are of the most substantial and tasteful kind. This is from the Weekly Advocate and Emporium in 1841. And why is this important? Because the colored population of Pittsburgh were the first to settle down on Prospect Hill, and a colony having been established about 12 years since, it has continued to flourish down to the present writing. Indeed, many of them proved to be excellent citizens who seemed to take pride in the prosperity of the town originally commenced by them. For a while, these people had the sole possession of the hill, but the favorable location attracted the attention of the white brethren who followed in their wake till at present, they number many of our most influential and respectable citizens. Why is this important? Because it means that we were here first. We literally were the creators of the hill, the founders of the hill, and this is a part of our story. And so when you had these people are the ones who created the Underground Railroad here in Pittsburgh. They're the ones who hosted Martin Delaney, and they are the ones who, along with the broader community, created the first colored convention in 1843. So our history does not begin or end with the civic arena. We need to start before then, and that's for everybody. So moving forward, during the late 19th century, immigrants began flowing into what we now call the Lower Hill. Upon exiting the train stations, they came, the Irish, the Italian, the Russian, the Black freedmen and African Americans. They all came and they settled for a new life in Pittsburgh and in the Lower Hill. Then it started to decay. You saw the pictures, you know, they were piled up. It was very close. A change needed to happen. And so there were discussions about what should happen next. You know, how do we do urban renewal? And so Pittsburgh was chosen as the first federal funding to get the federal money to create the Urban Redevelopment Authority. That's why it was created, to receive those funds. And as we see, the Civic Arena opened up in 1961. There was a ton of displacement. Let's stay here on this slide for a second. I know that you all saw this, but this is incredibly important because these were the early images and the early plans for the Hill. To date, what did we leave with? All we ended up with was the Civic Arena, one building of Washington Plaza, the hospital, and Epiphany Church. And I don't know about you all, but I know that literally my entire life, I grew up with this property, with this development, with nothing else happening. And thankfully, we had Crawford Square that did happen above Crawford Street. But below Crawford Street, nothing. That's it. All right. So you see how those are the designs and you see how it changed the Hill. So look at what was promised versus what was delivered, right? And then because we had promises that were not delivered, it caused us to protest, right? So here we are protesting. Next slide. We're protesting in front of the Civic Arena. Next slide, because they move up. We're protesting and different signs. They say we have jobs, but you see the arena in the background. They're protesting after that development was created. This is very important. We don't want to repeat this process. That's the whole point. We want to work too. Next slide. Signs, open arena for jobs. Why no jobs? We pay taxes too. These are our ancestors. You know, I know Brenda Tate is in this meeting. This probably looks very familiar to Brenda Tate. I heard her stories about being displaced from the Lower Hill. I know this information. I didn't grow up in it. I grew up in this empty development, big parking lot, but this is what we're fighting for. Next slide. So Frankie Pace is very important because she helped to not only organize the resistance, but she made it known with this billboard. It read, "Attention URA. No more redevelopment beyond this point. We demand low-income housing for the Lower Hill." Why is this important? Frankie Pace is the predecessor to the Hill CDC, and Marimba Malliance is the head of the Hill CDC. Next slide. Enter August Wilson. He wrote this quote. He said, "I write about the unique particulars of Black culture. I wanted to place this culture on stage in all its richness and fullness, and to demonstrate its ability to sustain us through profound moments in our history in which the larger society has thought less of us than we have thought of ourselves." This is incredibly important. In his next play, in his last play, I'm sorry, that's right. I wanted to definitely show this 1 mile radius of vacant land, because many of us, this is what we grew up with. If it wasn't public housing that, you know, became more dismal with crime and drugs, then it was just vacant land. All right, next slide. So in his play, Radio Golf, which is about the arrival of new development, you know, we need to ask ourselves, what do we get out of this development? That is why we're here. Next slide. This is Sterling Johnson, one of the main characters in Radio Golf. And we need to ask ourselves, what happens to him? Where are his jobs? Where are the contracts? And what do we do to develop this entrepreneur, to develop his business? What do we say to him? What do we say to the arts entrepreneurs who are ready for new opportunities to sell their products and their food to a large audience? What do we say to them? And what do we say to our overall community that is waiting for this reinvestment? It's time for a new chapter. And ironically enough, it's interesting that there are so many layers of overlap, right? Because Amanda Gorman says, "The hill we climb, if only we dare." It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it. So it's time for a new chapter to honor and repair who we are, what we do, and how we're going to move forward. Thank you all so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Howard Graves. I'm one of the principals of Graves Design Group Architects, and we are collaborative with Gensler on the F&B Tower. To get everyone oriented with the site, essentially what you see here is the perimeter of the site, which has been subdivided into various parcels. On my left is the northern side along Bedford Avenue. Along the eastern side, which is the bottom of the page, is Crawford. To my immediate left is Center Avenue, which goes down and abuts the CAP project, which is currently an active project going on today. So getting you orientated there, what I want to focus on is Crawford, which works both north and south of the overall perimeter of the site, was at one time clearly delineated, okay, or was the demarcation is probably a better way to put that, historically, to basically define where the new hill started and where the arena began to house itself. For a long time, it disconnected the community and created a sea of parking. What this project is looking to do is essentially reconnect the community vis-a-vis through the Wiley Avenue Street corridor, which will go from the very eastern side, which is Crawford, down to the CAP in itself. So along that route will be a lot of branch streets, which are part of the historical network of streets that were there historically, that included Fullerton as well as Logan Street. The focus, however, is going to be at the G1 site with respect to this building. This particular project, once fully developed, in the creation of the open space immediately around that for pedestrian activity, will look to promote both the meeting and greeting, and more importantly, the discovery of things of the new site and the people that will be impacted by this. And we think this is a very positive attribute of the overall project. What you see here is the kind of collective grouping and learning and just basically laying your hair down, sitting down on some green grass and fellowshipping with one another. So that's the overall goal of the project. And I think it's going to be impacted by everyone who's a participant in that project. That includes the community. Thank you. I want to turn this now over to the other portion of our team that will discuss how the development will benefit the overall community.
Thank you, Howard. I just wanted to also acknowledge that Howard Graves, he had to remind us that he was one of the ones who was old enough to remember when it was coming down, when the lower hill was being demolished. He too is a Hill District resident. And thank you, Dr. Ellis, for your remarks. I'm glad we have a scholar who is deeply, who is as deep as you on the subject matter. On this slide here, I just want to speak briefly to the process by which revitalization dollars will go from the lower hill into the middle and upper hill. This is what we call collective community collaborative development. So as the building is built, we will have tax revenues that will go from this lower hill site into the middle and upper hill. This has never been done before, right? 50% of all the tax revenues from this development will go to the middle and upper hill. On this site, we're going to ensure that there's going to be inclusive development to make sure that we have the highest MBE participation. The city has a standard for 18 and 7 for MBE and MWBE participation. We're shooting for 45. Next slide. That is not my phone. So here, this is just kind of a matrix to give you somewhat of a timeline of where we are. Let's look down in this lower left corner. Here's where we are. We're not just talking about putting monies into the neighborhood. We're talking about actually investing and hiring African-American women-owned businesses to make sure that we get it right from the beginning. This is pre-development dollars. These are pre-development dollars. And so on the MBE side, we have 28.2%. And on the WBE, we have 13.4% for a total of 41.6%. This is around $2 million that have been invested already in pre-development funds. And so as we look forward to May and the first quarter of 2023, we want to look up top at this phasing. So we're almost 90% complete with regard to our professional services, but this is just getting started. There will be many phases cycling through. So phase one is our mobilization phase, and this will be commenced in May of 2021. Phase two is when we get into the heavy construction. Phase three, late packages in quarter one of 2022. But guess what? We're not waiting until 2022 to begin explaining how we are breaking down packages. We're doing something very different. We're starting almost an entire year prior. We have Puccini Polling Group staff right now who are partnering with our neighborhood organizations to teach how to bid and how to estimate for these contracts. We've talked with our builder, who is PJ Dick, about how we break down packages. Oftentimes, our MBE firms were not able to participate because we had packages that were too large for them to perform, but we're breaking these down. So we're going to be talking more about those opportunities at another time. Next slide. Next slide. So let's jump into our design elements. We really want you to see how this building looks. This is G4 is going to be somewhat of the front door of the G1 parcel where the First National Bank Tower will be built. And so I want to bring on Vaki, who will help us to talk about what is a healthy 20-minute neighborhood.
Thank you, Bomani. Good evening, Felicity. Good evening, Marimba and everybody on the call. I'm Vaki Marimba, managing principal of the design firm Gensler. So at the heart of every thriving, healthy, and resilient community is the baseline necessity for being connected. And connectivity enables access, and that is the access to mobility and reliable transit, access to open spaces and public amenities that enhance that sense of shared ownership that Marimba spoke to, safe walkable streets, a variety of offerings of residential, and most importantly, that reality of genuine opportunities for employment, for entrepreneurship, wealth creation in one's own community. So the ability to access all of these essentials by walking, if you were to choose to, in an environment that supports health and safety and really provides convenience is this concept of the 20-minute equity-driven neighborhood. And it describes the experience that we envision for the Lower Hill and for the district as a whole. It is something where families and visitors alike can really enjoy this enhanced sense of community that builds on the cultural foundation of the district. Next slide, please. So from a planning perspective, connectivity must both be, physical and symbolic. And I think people come together most appreciably in that public realm, on the streets, and in the spaces that are in between the buildings. So restitching together that urban core with the Hill District, that's going to be achieved by extending the historic Wiley Avenue all the way through. And that is across the new Cat Park and into the urban core, and as a walkable green spine with park spaces and gathering places for families and visitors alike. That's kind of what we vision. Center Avenue with its commercial and residential development, that's going to draw you right up into the heart of the Hill District. It'll be a literal and visible extension of all of the economic momentum that will be created and the creation of employment and opportunities and housing opportunities for many within the district. And lastly, Logan Avenue. This is going to be the center of all the energy, a place where you can find music and entertainment, food and beverage, and retail. Next slide, please. As my partner, Peter Stubb, will describe shortly, if we have time, Wiley Avenue really is this green spine, and it's comprised of a series of connected, curated landscapes that'll be the sort of experiential glue that's really going to hold the whole place together and give it its sense of identity for this new development. Next slide, please. Bomani? You're on mute, Bomani.
My apologies. I'm going to breeze through this just so that we have some of our design partners get an opportunity to speak, and then also so that you can hear from our equity partners. Am I still on mute?
You're good.
Yes. Okay. So this is a reconnection point. One of the points that Dr. Ellis touched on is how Wiley Avenue cut us off from our Lower Hill neighborhood. So this is our attempt to use the Wiley Avenue Logan intersection to provide a cultural and historic and economic reconnection to the Lower Hill site. I'm going to, next slide, just in the interest of time so that we can get to our design and so you can hear from the principals. Dr. Ellis?
Yes, so this is the work that I did on the Cat Park. Just as a reminder, the Cat Park is a public park. It's considered a neighborhood park, and they received federal funding because it was a neighborhood park in the Lower Hill. And so what we did was to make it very obviously stamped with African-American culture and elements. In addition to the Sankofa bird, we have the history wall that will honor much of the history that I discussed earlier with Martin Delaney as the feature, because he's an international figure from the 1800s. We're going to honor Frankie Pace in the 1900s for all of her work. And then here in the 21st century is just the illustration of Keisha, our tour guide. And two small things that you can't see in this image is that here, while she's sitting in the grass, she's actually reading a book, and it has Harriet Tubman on one side and Martin Delaney on the other. And in this picture here, where she's gazing up at the sky, she's gazing up at the North Star, the Little Dipper. And this North Star constellation matches, or it makes some connectivity between the Lower Hill site and the North Star constellation in Market Square, connecting these histories because we're connecting the Underground Railroad and also moving up into our present. Thank you.
So some of the activities that we see happening within these open common spaces are shown on screen here. But and I'm not going to go through each one of them, but the idea is that activation, families, retail, events, public events, gatherings, things that continue to enhance our sense of community and elevate that experience so that we continue to invite more and more of the outside community into our community and without diluting the sense of who we are, where we're coming from, and where our culture comes from is super, super important. Next slide, please. So there you go, just a few more of those images. And you can see it's a combination of programmed activities with weekend events, but also creating some of these opportunities in the bottom left for kiosks and retail and opportunities for small businesses and entrepreneurship to take place. This is part of the vision. Next slide, please. And what is it going to feel like to be there, to walk by this building that Bomani has just been speaking about, which is in the center view? Well, really, this is going to be, all of these buildings are envisioned to be buildings within a large park. This is a park experience. This is an outdoor urban realm experience that has brand new development around it. Opportunities for small retails you can see on the right with the kiosks, but you'll be able to walk across this lawn, which is the Great Lawn, and have new vantage points to the city and new vantage points up the hill into the Hill District. Next slide, please. Here's the views from slightly further up the hill, looking down again towards the new development. And you can see opportunities for public art, for curation, ways to capture the historical significance of the Hill District, whether through memorabilia or through sculpture or through other art forms. Next slide, please. And then a grand view here taken, I would say about 500 feet above the middle hill, looking down. You can see the spine of Wiley Avenue, really with new impact, going all the way through the Cap Park and reconnecting back into the urban core. This is what successful planning starts to look like, is restitching communities and bringing us all back together so that we can enjoy a broader sense of community and all the amenities that come with that. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaki. I'm Peter Stubb. As Vaki mentioned, I'm his partner in this project. I'm going to try to get through this pretty quickly. What you see on the screen here, so we're looking at the big picture. Now we're zooming in and looking at the G4, G1 parcels together. And that view that you saw of that open lawn area, the G4 block, and the opportunity for kiosks to be located in there and activate that space as a sort of destination from the hill coming down or from the city coming up. It's a place that has promontory and prospect. There's a potential for overlook and art, and you'll see as we go through some of these views pretty quickly a series of integrated spaces that have various sizes and shapes and materialities that offer different things, but welcoming to everyone and offer opportunities to do many different things. I want to also engage Lisa Dugan to walk through some of these images as well.
Thank you. So as you can see, this is just a section cutting through some of the landscape terraces that are occurring at G4. And what is happening here is we have low walls with sloped plantings. So what we're creating is a very welcoming connection from Washington Place all the way up to the overlook and the Great Lawn. And in all those intermediate terraces, we're really creating places for gathering and connection, and activating it with flexible seating and even kind of built-in wood lounge seating as well. Next slide, please.
I think one thing to point out is that, the terraces, the steps, being a part of the character of Pittsburgh too, like really kind of playing on that. Good.
And then briefly here, just from Washington Place, we have a kind of a central spine of stairs that connects from Washington Place all the way up to Logan Street and kind of terminating in a Logan Street plaza. And then our, in terms of accessibility, really connecting horizontally from G1 all the way across to those G4 terraces to the future planned accessible pathways on F2 to the right. Yes, thank you. Next slide. Now this is a view at our overlook. The Great Lawn would be off to your right. We're really trying to maximize those fantastic views from over the city and Cap Park and create places for art and event programming and performance spaces as well. Next slide. And then this is a view on one of the lower level terraces that I just mentioned on G4. As you can see, we're carving out these intimate gathering spaces, again, flexible seating, and really providing, again, places for people to discover and to connect. And this is just an aerial view so that you can see kind of the tapestry and how all of these levels are really connecting all of these spaces and creating these intimate gathering spaces that also are complementing the larger, larger Great Lawn and kind of activity spaces that are happening throughout the site. Next slide. And then lastly, really thinking about how we're incorporating accessibility. And so that we really felt it was important to have a unified experience so that our steps and our accessible walkways are kind of unified and all combining and leading up to the lower level plaza there from Washington Place.
And just carrying on that theme, a little bit about the building itself. We've seen the ground plane on which the building lands. Next slide, please. That is equivalent to about 0.67 acres of urban open space adjacent to the building that addresses Washington Place over to the tower itself and up to connect to Logan Street, as Lisa mentioned. This view, as if you're down on the Cap Park looking back up towards the hill, you can see the terracing of the landscape. But generally, the building, as Bomani mentioned, is a 26-story tower, including office, retail, and parking that's integrated into the base of the building. It'll seek LEED Silver certification. And this open space is actually performing a stormwater management aspect as well, and is helping to mitigate the stormwater impact of the whole G parcel. Next slide. So hovering above the intersection of Center Avenue and Washington Place, you're looking into the future vision for this this urban open space, collectively the F2 and G4 parcels. But this is the doorstep up into this from the city that will ultimately rise through that entire master plan that Baki talked about, and this notion of connectivity from this moment here at the lower elevations all the way up through the project and connecting into the hill itself. Next slide, please. Just want to make sure we get through these. And so we talked about the ground plane aspects. I think what's important to touch on here is that the building itself is fairly transparent at the base. So the activities within the building, be it the retail spaces and the lobbies themselves, are visually integrated into the landscape. So the building actually sits lightly on the land and allows that kind of the internal activities and the outdoor activities are connected and visible. Next slide. And essentially the building is it's kind of three parts. There's a glass base that sits on the plaza as mentioned, and then just a beautiful, elegant series of glass planes that have a contrasting coloration to an inner box that creates this kind of profile on the skyline. And I think that is, next slide. Yeah, and then just some more materiality down at the base. You're seeing into the lobby space, the notion that however community art and other elements are integrated and visible and present, and those activities from inside to outside is really important to activating the space. And I think that's our, yeah. And I'll hand it over to Bomani again to carry us through the implementation plan. Thank you.
So Felicity, I want to thank you for allowing us a few more minutes to get to some very important items. Thanks to all of the presenters who helped with our design and the historical elements. We wanted to make sure that you all had a chance to hear from Amici Aka, who is the principal of Clay Cove Capital, and from I keep calling you Puccini, from Chris Puccini, who is the principal of BPG. A lot of conversations have been going back and forth around the term sheet and the actual investment dollars going into the neighborhood as a result of the commitments to Block G1 and G4. So I'd like to turn things over to Amici Aka.
Hello, can you hear me? Great. Thank you very much, Mark. As you said, my name is Amici Aka. I am the co-founder and managing partner of Clay Cove Capital. And we are a real estate investment firm that focuses on not only transformational projects, but also impact investing. And for me, I'm so proud to be part of this and so happy to be welcomed into Pittsburgh for such an important project. That's why we have made a multi-million-dollar investment that makes us one of the majority investors in this project. And we have investment for at least 12 years. We look to be partners for many years to come. And not just in this project, but this is the opening gateway for us to be part of a partnership, a long-term partnership with you in the entire Hill. I said before in other meetings, no project in the lower Hill is successful unless the entire Hill is successful. And we believe that. We've done this type of investing in other areas. I'm happy and proud to do this in Pennsylvania, being a third generation Pennsylvanian. And I think that this has so much potential because, as I said before, we are excited to be partners in a community that has such a proud history as the Hill District. I've had the opportunity of coming to Pittsburgh very regularly over the last several months and meeting with residents, entrepreneurs, business owners, and civic leaders. I've been able to develop partnerships with them that I think will last a lifetime. And I look forward to meeting more and more of you. Part of the reason we wanted to have this meeting is because we want to engage the entire community. And with that, we're only going to have a deeper and richer project, and many more projects will come. I look forward to the fact that we will have the opportunity to invest with you throughout the Hill District in your dreams and your ideas for building a brighter future. We will build community and economic activity, and we will be in a position where, as we have been in a partnership, we will all benefit mutually. We are committed and excited to this entire comprehensive investment program. Being a owner of a 100% minority-owned firm, it to me is the work of my lifetime. And we have made sure that our partnership is not just words, but it's commitments. We have signed the CSIP. We have signed the Block G contract, a Block E contract, and we're looking to make sure that we are in a position where soon we will be able to sign a similar contract on Block G. So I am excited again to be your partner and look forward to us engaging further in this process to really make your hopes and dreams come true as we build the Hills District together.
Chris, I just wanted to let you know I was going to give you an additional 5 minutes, just so you got an opportunity to
Good evening,
talk
everyone.
as well.
My name's Chris Puccini. I'm co-founder, co-president of the Puccini Polling Group. I'm a 30-year friend of Amici's and a 20-year business partner of Amici's from Clay Cove. So proud to be here with Amici tonight. We're incredibly proud of the team we've assembled that is guiding this project and who will ultimately build this project. We are incredibly proud of the project itself and the impact it will have on the surrounding community in the city of Pittsburgh and its chance to repair broken connections. And we are incredibly proud of the partnership we have assembled. This is a very, very complicated project and is truly taking a village, as I think tonight's presentation showed. This is a very emotional project and one that I'm personally invested in as the co-president of the Puccini Polling Group. This is something I'm very personally invested in. Our collective commitments are a major opportunity to align the entire Hill District and for all to engage in shared prosperity. I would urge those of you who have not, please go to my company website, bpgroup.net, to see exactly what we do over the last 25 years. Our tagline you will see is, quote, "We build community," unquote. And if you go to our news and outreach tabs, you will see the kind of communities investment we make on a weekly basis in the communities we invest in, to the children, the family, and the community itself. And in Pittsburgh, we're very fortunate to, in addition to Amici and Clay Cove, to have FNB, Bank, and the Penguins to invest alongside of us. This project is ready to break ground this summer, and I thank all of you for your support. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Chris. I don't think you could hear me on your end because I know Bomani had to mute a couple different people.
Can you
hear me, Bomani?
Again, I want to thank Felicity for allowing us some additional time to present. There's a lot more that we'd like to present, and we don't have enough time tonight to do that. But I hope you got a sense for how not only passionate or how much we're planning to provide opportunities to the neighborhood, to small businesses around the region. And so we'd like to open up for questions and answers, and we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Bomani. I don't know if you guys could hear me on your end because I know you had to mute quite a few people, but I was writing some things in the chat to give you guys.
Listen, we can't hear you, I don't think.
Yeah, I think everyone else can hear me, but
Okay,
I don't.
I'm sorry, that was me. All right.
That's what I was saying. I was trying to like give you guys some cues and things, but I know that you're muted on your end, so you couldn't hear me saying that. So all good, all good. All right, so we are going to open this up for Q&A. We have to have a way to try and keep this orderly so we don't have people like talking over each other or interrupting. So if you guys could, if you want to, you know, speak in person, if you could drop a note in the chat and then we'll go in order. So I know to unmute you. You can also raise your hand if you know how to use the raise hand feature on Zoom so we can know to unmute you. And then we're gonna pull, in the meantime, like while you guys are thinking through your thoughts and gathering that and typing into the chat, I'm gonna pull some questions that were already typed in the chat here. So a couple of them. One of the first ones we received was, what is the rent or lease price, I guess would be better to say, for space in the Block G1 tower?
Thank you for the question. I apologize, we're on dueling laptops here. But the asking rent in the tower will be in the upper $30 per square foot, which you know, is the cost of new office space in the Pittsburgh area.
Thank you. Another question we received, how many local resident businesses will actually have brick and mortar space in the Lower Hill? I'm assuming they mean Block G1 or Block G4.
Can you repeat the question, Felicity?
Sure, I know it's hard because you guys are trying to hear and not have the background echo. So we had a question here in the chat, how many local resident businesses will actually have brick and mortar space in the Lower Hill? And because of the purposes here tonight, I'm assuming they mean Block G1 and Block G4.
It's hard to say right now. We're definitely committed to making sure that we are providing as much space as possible for varying scales of businesses. Brick and mortar space has hit our community, particularly African-American community, really hard as a result of the pandemic. The G1 space is a 26-story tower. There is some planning for first floor retail space, but I can't give you an exact answer to that question right now.
Let me jump in, Bomani. So the way we see this, obviously, it's difficult to build on a large scale like this site, as obviously you just don't see large projects like this happening every day, especially in the middle of a pandemic. This tower and F&B Bank's commitment to wanting to be here, despite a pandemic, despite the fact that people aren't really going back into office buildings, is truly extraordinary. And F&B's commitment really gives us an anchor tenant that allows us to kick off this project. And I think the first phase of the LRTA is about $7.5 million that would be going into the neighborhood, and they really help create that. In the E block, and guys, please correct me because there's a lot going through our head right now. In the E block, we're building an emergency response center, and we're also going to build a Catapult, which is a incubator for businesses from within the community. In addition to that, there also will be, we're spending probably close to $6 to $7 million on the open space as per our agreement. And in that, we will be donating all that open space to a non-for-profit that will manage it, and they will oversee the management of Dr. Ellis. I'm just blanking now, but is it 6 different kiosks? I think Dr. Ellis has been very helpful in the design.
Oh, I mean, it's a number of different kiosks, but the point is that we're going to have permanent stations as well as temporary and seasonal, because somebody actually addressed that. And also we'll have retail in the building. So it's true, the weather does make, you know, different things possible, and we're looking at all aspects, permanent, temporary, you know, inside, outside. And it's hard to actually to explain everything, right? Because we're not at the level where we're up on Logan Street and up in the other developments. So I do think, you know, at this meeting, especially because this is a community meeting, that perhaps you or Bomani could address like the overall image, the overall plan, because I think community members deserve to know, you know, what's happening.
You want to do it, Bomani? The overall plan? The overall plan? I'm sorry,
Well,
Dr. Ellis, the overall plan, do you mean that just the master plan of what ultimately goes on the full 28 acres or just on G1?
No, the overall plan, because we've been focused on G1
Just
and
one.
and which is important, and that is the only thing that's going forward. So I'm not trying to skip, but I just think that the community needs to know what the vision is for the site, because you might be thinking like, well, where's the rest of the kiosks and where are the other opportunities and where, you know what I mean? And we haven't even touched Logan Street yet.
Right.
I just wanted to emphasize what Dr. Ellis said. I think we should take very limited time to talk about plans that are actually not be going before the Planning Commission, just so that we serve the purpose of this meeting to talk about what is happening on Block G1. But please go ahead, Bomani, and give a short response.
Yeah, short response is on G1, this is a tower. It's a 26-story tower. And the most important thing I think we should think about in G1 is the monetization of the LERTA monies, the local economic revitalization tax abatement monies. 50% of the monies, the tax monies that'll come from the revenues of the building will go back into the middle and upper hill. So this enables us to, you know, one quick story, right? So I was talking with a friend of mine, Big Tom's Barbershop, right? And he was telling me about the struggle to get projects capitalized. And when you have a project that is designed for monies to go from the lower hill into the middle and upper hill, it helps to attract investment capital, like what Amici was talking about coming from his firm, Clay Cove Capital. That's the key thing about this building here, G1.
And what I would encourage everyone is, we were asked by the EMC to put together a term sheet, which we presented, I think about 2 weeks ago, as a summary of impact to the Block G and the Block E parcels. And we then, at that request, and I actually personally did it because, so for me to sign it, I wanted to make sure that I wrote every letter there. And then we further put in more of a legal document that we then presented last Friday, that goes into detail of, you know, over a $36 million impact to the community on from Block G, another 10 million from Block E, and it goes towards grants that we look to make into businesses in the Greater Hill District, because as Michi said, we do truly believe that for this project in the Lower Hill to succeed, all of the Hill District needs to succeed. And as I've always described it to our architects, when this project is done, we will have succeeded if you don't know where our project starts and where our project ends. And yes, there is one tower here in the lower left corner, and that is the transition space from the central business district into our project. You will see the buildings then become very low thereafter and ultimately into residential, which then will bleed into its surrounding residential neighborhoods.
We have another question here that said, what types of businesses, and I'm trying to get through all of them, I'm sorry guys, what types of businesses will be in this building? I think that was from Kim Williams. Yes.
We apologize. If there was a question, please repeat.
What types of businesses will occupy this building? Bomani, you're muted. There you go.
I'm sorry. I'll get this by the end of the night. So this is this is a commercial office space building. The first tenant is Financial Bank, First Financial Bank, obviously. So they'll occupy 160,000 square feet of the building. But on the first floor, there will be some small retail shops to accompany the lobby. You saw some of the terraces that were illustrated in the drawings. And some of this is still being drafted in our designs. We're in the very early stages of our design.
Thank you, Bomani. All right.
Can
go
I
ahead.
just ask a question, just a point of
Sure.
clarity? In the presentation earlier, I think the timeline said that you were planning to break ground in June. Did I misunderstand that? Anybody from the development team?
Our goal would be to take the land down this summer and start construction this summer. Correct.
Okay, so in order to do that, you would have to be probably at about, 90% of the way for the design of the building.
No,
So where are you percentage wise?
we're probably close to 40, 50%. And moving very, very, very rapidly. We have a small window of opportunity to start construction so that F&B we can get the building built in time for F&B to move in. They have many other offices around the city as well as the country. And I think there are 6 or 7 leases that, cannot be extended. And so there is pressure to start construction to get them in time. Otherwise, it puts the project in jeopardy. And unfortunately, as the developer, we don't control. We've been trying for a while to get tenants, and we have to be very clear, have one tenant right now for the project, and that is FNB, who will be close to half the building occupancy, as well as a lender, which is impossible to get an office construction loan right now in America, as well as an investor in the project, as well as being willing to give us a loan that we will guarantee to monetize the LRTA, so that instead of the Hill District having to wait a decade to get it year by year, they would get it day one. And then to the extent there were some additional revenues going forward, which we're still trying to project, there would be more to the Hill District as well.
Thank you, Chris. I'm just going in order here down the chat. So Kaya and Kim, you did pretty much address her question. That was about the kiosks and the weather. Just wanted to acknowledge that. She talked about not very good for sustained economic growth. Those are seasonal and transient opportunities, but Kim, you already addressed that. Here's Kim Williams, so a different Kim. How is this building going to benefit all Hill District residents as far as parking and employment?
Oh, I can't wait for COVID to be over one day, so we could think it's a lot more effective in person. So my apologies with technology. How does it affect from employment? Well, as Bomani said, we are giving ourselves very aggressive MWBE goals on the construction of this project. The first phase will be over 1,000 construction jobs, or actually I should say, the first pre-development cost of $5 million, we've already awarded 41% to minority and women-owned businesses. And on the construction side, we expect we've been working daily to the plans to get the construction jobs up well north of 40%. So I think just to start there, and then we have, we signed, our partnership signed a CSIP agreement, which we will, of course, live up to and hope to exceed, which will also put us in a position to hire people from the community going forward. And what I like about this project, as I said in an earlier, is this is truly mixed use. It's a large project. So yes, we will have an office tower. We will have a parking garage. The tower gives us the demand to build the parking garage, which creates jobs, but also a live music venue, which creates other jobs. And so there will be a diversity of jobs that we will be able to create here. And it's something that we have done as a company in other cities and other places. But we, as a developer and contractor, we're very, very committed to creating well north of 40% MWA. And PJ Dick has recently had that kind of success. I think Boris, at the airport, and then at the YMCA, or at the in the YMCA as well. So it's something that we, F&B, the Penguins, BPG, Clay Cove, care deeply about.
All right, thank you, Chris. Next comment in here. Oh, I see we have a hand raised. Let me go ahead over and grab a live comment, and then I'm going to come back to the chat. I guess you guys, as I said, guys, please keep dropping them in there. I'm going through every single one. So I'm going to take a live comment here from Daniel Armanio. So I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. I see a raised hand. Go ahead. I'm sorry, you're still muted. You got to hit. I know.
Right.
There you
Can
go.
you all hear me now?
We can. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make some observations I noticed about the presentation. I heard a lot of the term opportunity and possibility. Every time commitment was used, it was without any definition of what that was. I noticed a lot of words, revitalization dollars, tax revenues, not so much even the name Penguins. And by the way, the Penguins have made 159 million in revenue last year, 14 million operating income during a pandemic. I also noticed that when any kind of number needed to be put in, it was on corporate tenants that would be running the building, as well as the market rate for the housing lease, office leases. Any numbers that the community have asked in terms of percentages of, they've only gotten percentages, not dollars in terms of minority owned businesses. Also in the presentation, only on slide 59, in very little text, the numbers weren't really placed in any way that we could see them. And so this all is a trend to me that works very much in line with why the DRP has not passed this project. So I want to know more clearly, how much are you willing and are you going to engage with the community on the DRP? What's the role of the census tract change? And how are you going to be able to directly answer with numbers and figures, as opposed to just vagaries of what you're going to give to the community today?
Daniel, thank you for that question. It's the reason why I wrote a summary term sheet that has line by line every principle of the CSIP and a specific dollar amounts next to that for both block E and G, which totals about $46 million, was so that actually there would be complete transparency. So I appreciate your frustration, and I would urge the term sheet. It's incredibly specific with action items, bullet points, dollar amounts. I'd love for you to get a chance to see that, and we will post that. We'll make that, if you know, I'm sure others within the community will, so that actually you can see all that. But you'll see very specific, all the specifics that you're asking, or maybe not all the specifics that you're requesting will be there. And as you can imagine, we appreciate the 20-minute process, and we're very grateful for 50% addition, but there's just only so much we could say within 20 minutes. So thank you for understanding that.
Chris, I have a clarification. Is it possible for you all to deliver the term sheet for block G1 and block G4 separately? Because block E is not going through planning right now. So I think it's a part of the confusion is that people are mixing together a block that's not being considered. So is it possible for you to have someone on your team to to essentially aggregate or disaggregate the information.
Absolutely, and I apologize because, you know, obviously people look at things differently. We specifically had G1 and G4 together and block E separate. And within G1 and G4, we will separate them. We'll separate them. We internally look at them as one because we're doing them all together, as well as the Planning Commission. But we'll get that right to you, Marimba.
Thank you.
And when I say right to you, hopefully in the next 48 hours.
4,
Thank you.
6,
I'm
7.
sorry. I also just wanted to acknowledge that, as he said, that the term sheet was just received Friday. It is 27 pages of legal documents. So as you can imagine, we have not had the time to review prior to this meeting. So we'll need the opportunity to do so. Another comment. So most of the developer's presentation has been about design. However, it's my understanding that the DRP are not contesting or criticizing the design at all, but rather the use of funding streams and lack of financial community benefit and protection being provided. Can the developers please address the issues that have been raised by the Hill CC earlier in the presentation, such as unfulfilled promises regarding parking revenue streams, community center funding, job creation, et cetera. Please also explain how and why the development was moved into the opportunity zone boundary behind the backs of the community. What added benefit will the community be receiving as a result of the opportunity zone windfall?
Thank you for your question. I'll take on part of it about being an opportunity zone. I am the opportunity zone investor. My firm is. We've done opportunity investments across the country, and we believe that they are a great catalyst for economic development and economic progress. We hope that being part of the Hill District, we can be a blueprint for more development, and we're looking to do more opportunity zone investments in the Hill District. So, the most important thing to me about the opportunity zone is also the alignment of interest. It's at least 10 years of capital committed to these communities. It's long-term partnership. It's not about just coming and flipping buildings. This is about building communities. And so, this is what my firm's about. We are an impact investor. And we want to make sure that our investors understand that it takes long-term partnership to transform neighborhoods. And that transformational process is a partnership that we look forward to having with you, because by the definition of our investment, we will be together for over a decade and more than a decade. And as we do more and more opportunity zone investments in the Hill District from the blueprint we have in Block G, we're going to have a longer partnership. So I'm excited about this, progression of the opportunity zone and about how we can work together. And any questions you have on opportunity zone investments, please, you can reach me anytime. I'm very excited to bring the first opportunity zone investment to the Hill District, but there's many more to come.
And I would just like to add, the Opportunity Zone program has been in existence for over 2 years now. And BPG did one of the first opportunity zone investments in the history since it was created 2 years ago.
Hold on, Chris,
it's something we're incredibly proud of. The Sports Center that has been very well received by the adjacent neighborhood. One, because it's created a lot of jobs in the community, but also two, more importantly, we've given children from the adjacent community a place to be a part of and to engage. And I've offered to many people here locally, I'd love to give a tour of that, and the huge impact that this opportunity zone investment that we made had on our surrounding community. It's something it never would have happened without the use of the opportunity zone law.
Chris, I know you guys, can you hear me now? I know you guys are, okay, Bomani, okay. I know that you guys were trying to hear me on there. Mr. Acca, we had a follow-up question that's tied to the comments that you made, so we'll just take it now. The question related to who your investors are. So you are the you're the head of a management of an investment fund. So who are your investors? Who is investing in your company?
So my investors are, well, for my firm in general, we have a mix of both individuals and institutional investors. For the opportunity zones, it is individuals who are looking for our impact investing sleeve. And so we've been blessed to have people who not only want to do impact investing in general, but also those who are very interested in the Hill District itself. And so I think it's a great alignment of interest because it's not only investors for a purpose, but purpose for this district and this community. And the story of this community and helping to right the wrongs and advance the cause is the story of my investment firm and what we're doing here. So, I can't give specific names under SEC laws, but I can assure you that these are people who are aligned with you and your hopes and your beliefs and desires for economic development in the Hill District.
Felicity, I have a question if I could ask one.
Sure, we'll take a live question and then I'm going to go back to the chat. Go ahead, Darnell.
Hey, this is Darnell Dinkins, former Super Bowl champion with the New Orleans Saints and a Hill District native, grew up in Elmore Square. What MBE firms are you looking to work with in terms of, the construction development? If you're looking to start in 2.5 months, as Derek Tillman and myself, do multiple things. And, we want to know, I've been in a lot of meetings, a lot of the NFL, negotiations and hear a lot of talk and mental jargon. And sometimes it kind of talk around the narrative, but who are you looking at? What MBE firms are you looking to utilize in terms of construction if you're looking to start in 2.5 months?
Thank you for that question, and salute to you. I'm proud to. I haven't met you yet, but I've heard about you. I'm glad to see somebody like yourself who's straight out of the projects come back to help rebuild our neighborhood. Salute to you for that, and to you and to your partner Derek Tillman too. So with regard to your question, as far as MBEs, we're looking to make sure that we have like a blockbuster moment with regard to MBE participation. So we have a process, and I'm hopeful that we have another chance to present this to the community. We have another presentation that we have given to the DRP that really outlines and explains the process. And so I'm just going to very briefly answer your question. We have the largest MBE database, I believe now in the region. And we have that because we've been combining all of the databases with regard to those who are about this work. We have over 350 MBEs in our database. We have contracted with E Holdings, who is run by Janae Smith-Williams and Irv Williams, to make sure that we have an intake process. And once we have that intake process, you can fill out your basic information, and then we do an assessment on what your needs are. So if there are capital needs, if there are training needs with regard to bidding and contracting, we try to get that assessment and then send you directly towards some of our community partners who are helping with regard to the business support wraparound services.
But Monty, can I chime in on what you're saying as well?
Sure.
Your reputation supersedes itself, but I'm from A to Z. I know that Derek Tillman, I've been to many teams. The Ravens were a great team. We won with the Saints because we had a great game plan. This guy knows the area from A to Z and what we've done in the construction side, what we've done in the redevelopment side. We know people like the back of our hand. Irv Williams happened to be my cousin. So, these are things and questions that we can read the initiatives of the people. We're going to redevelop buildings. Our main initiative is redevelop people. We're going to the local, construction places and helping people within these communities to be developed, not just the buildings, but the people as well. So we would like to be part of the initiative if possible.
Yeah, I'm glad you spoke to that. A lot of times, we have these presentations, we talk about design and we get into the contract, and the people element is sometimes left out, but we're also making sure that we're connecting connections to the pipeline, right? So we're partnering with Pittsburgh Public Schools to make sure that we reconnect. But back in the day, you could go to Collin Trade and you can get any trade that you can get into any trade that you wanted to get some employment in the region. But what we're doing also is making sure that we're connecting with Pittsburgh Public Schools to not only get into some of the trades, but also business administration, IT, finance, engineering, but in addition to that, the trades, right?
But Monty, this is
Carpentry,
exactly
HVAC, machinery.
and this is exactly what we've done already with Anthony Hamlet. 4 years of high school and 4 years of college determines like 40 years of your life. So we are laying the foundation to help these kids. So programs like this, you know, you should be talking to people in terms of in the community who is doing it. And once again, not to keep pushing me and Derek, but we would absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, I know Derek has been, his company name is Bridging the Gap, and he's been doing that good work for a long time. So Derek has my number directly, and we also have, you know, we see each other in community groups, and so we'll make those connections to make sure that we have full access to that type of participation.
Thank you for that.
Guys.
Thank you,
guys
Bomani.
so much.
Thank you, Darnell. I have 2 hands waving at me in the chat. I see on my screen. I'm going to take one question from the chat, then I'm going to come back to live. We had one here. Is the project under a project labor agreement, which requires all construction trades must be signatory to the unions, or will union and non-union contractors be able to participate?
Glad we got this question. So this is something that we've been battling with for years, right? We know a lot of times when the contract is specifically allowing for union groups to kind of dominate the contracting, we don't get a chance to participate. I was in a meeting, Monday, late last week with the unions, and we put it right on the table. We want to make sure that if there are folks who are in the unions, who've been in the business or been in the unions for years and want to have some type of ascending track towards a union, building a union company, that they have the support to do that. And they said yes. Well, we said, well, what about non-union? Because some of the financial obligations to participate on these projects, it's very expensive, very capital intensive. And I see Curtis Moorhead in there, and he can speak to this. So if you have companies that have to make payroll over a 3 or 4 year period, 3 or 4 month period after submitting their invoice, sometimes there's a struggle to be able to do that. What type of capital access do we have to support groups, companies to be able to participate on a project? We're talking about making sure that we have packages broken down for partnerships between primes and smaller MBE firms. And so we're letting it be known that on this Lower Hill site, there will be some MBE firms who are union, and there will be some who will not be. And we said this very firmly in the meetings. And so, and this is a meeting with the top leadership of the unions. And so we're very serious about making sure that we hit our numbers with regard to the CSIP and exceeding the city's MBE participation goals, both union and non-union.
Thank you, Bomani. And I just wanted to acknowledge, I'm going to go to the live questions here in a second. I just want to acknowledge a couple of comments in the chat because I can group them together because a couple of people said the same thing, that the design is beautiful, but looks like another downtown building. A couple of people said this looks like another downtown building. Letha specifically said with no impact for the residents of the Hill District. I'm going to go to live. Kaya, I know you had your hand waving for a while, and then Mr. Douglas, you will go right after Kaya. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Kaya.
Thank you. Very good presentation. I had a couple of concerns. Your words are great. They're very emotional driven. A lot of feel good. I grew up here. This is my hometown. I love it. I feel what you are saying. I want the same thing. Emotions have no place in a business decision. This is about strategy and about putting pen to paper and making a contract. What are you all contractually willing to do to sign monetarily that will bring dollars to the Hill District and the residents of the Hill long-term, not 2 years, not 1 year, not transient kiosk, not beautiful landscape, not steps to a neighborhood, real dollars that will change lives, that will improve communities. because Black people have been lied to for decades. Black people have been lied to for centuries and have been told very flowery words and have been told, screw you, when the project is done. So what are you willing to do to put in paper a contract that can be backed by a court of law? If you're all about the Hill and this is such a great opportunity, put pen to paper, sign a contract, put dollars behind a contract and sign it long-term, not 2-3 years, 5, 10, 15, 20, generations of change. If Hill is that good, show and prove. Don't talk about it, be about it.
Well, thank you for your question. And I built an organization, built a firm based on strategy, not emotion. I'm an investor, professional investor. Went to the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, have a master's in finance and real estate. So what you're saying is music to my ears. We need to be thoughtful, strategic, economic investors. And we've signed many contracts. As you said, with the Opportunity Zone, we have a 12-year commitment. We've signed the CSIP, and we've done other commitments. So we believe in long-term commitment and partnership. And it's what the history of my firm's done. It's what we have proven before Opportunity Zones, and we'll continue to do it with Opportunity Zones and other investment means. So for us, it's important, but we also have a proven track record. And that's why we're able to bring capital to projects like this. And I'm very proud of that ability, because you're right. People in disadvantaged areas, people who look like me, people who are African Americans, have been, unfortunately, on the short end of the stick of a lot of investment. And why I spent the last 20 years building this firm is because of my belief. Why I went to business school is that we need to have investment firms that are looking to make impact in our communities. And I will be happy to talk to you anytime, show you the projects we've done, look at our track record, and understand that this is a commitment. We are 100% minority-owned firm. We have been 90% minority employed. We believe in what you're saying, not with flowery words, but with real dollars. Tens of millions of dollars we've invested in these type of projects, and we have made an impact on communities, and we want to do so here. The Hill District is a unique opportunity. You should be very proud of that, but you should also realize that I'm here as a partner, and if you want to build a partnership and develop a relationship, that's why I'm here, not for emotion, but for true impact investing that will benefit my investors, but also these communities.
Sir, I will take you up on that.
Ms. Price Dennis, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk. Did I just talk over you?
Yeah, I was just telling him, I will take him up on that.
Well, and people have across the country, and they'll tell you that, listen, we're as transparent as we can be. I'm looking forward to it. I wanted to have this meeting because I truly believe we have to be partners of the community. And I think that communication is essential to that. So I don't think, I hope it was characterized that we forced this meeting. I wanted this meeting because I want to meet the community. Unfortunately, because of COVID, I haven't been able to meet as many people in person. God willing, we're going to have meetings, we're going to break bread, we're going to be partners for decades. So please, this is not just words. I wouldn't be here, and I'm glad that I can be in Pittsburgh. I'm fortunate enough that you guys have invited us, and we're welcome to speak to you, and you've given us a lot of time, and I value your time. So please reach out, and let's continue to build this partnership. I'm excited for it.
And Ms. Price Dennis, I just want to say that it's hard not to be emotional with this project. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced in my career. The Hill CDC has created something I think unbelievably unique in America in the CSIP, and it's brilliant. And I think, and again, I'm in probably 15 cities. I'm probably in about 15 cities around America, from New York City to Portland, Oregon, to Philly, to Baltimore, to Nashville, to New Orleans. I've never seen a more ambitious community reinvestment project in America. And so when I say it's emotional, I think it's what really draws Amici and me to this project. And of course, we have investors. We don't, my grandparents all came over from Italy and lived, in South Philadelphia, in Germantown. And so I think it excites us to be part of something so transformational. But I will say that it's a lot of words and it's a lot of familiar faces, but that's why I wrote the term sheet, and I wrote, in fairness to Felicity, it is somewhat long, it is long, but there's really, it all boils, I purposely put it all down to one page that had line by line of what we are able to do. And what I like to do more, of course, but there's only so much that we can do financially to make this work. And so we've been very transparent in putting down bullet by bullet what we are prepared to do. And I would sign that, we'd like for it to be signed first, but we're ready to countersign that tonight. And we understand people's frustration with time. We feel the same way.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, if I may, Felicity, and I know we have a lot of different questions here. I just think it's important to point out that Chris Puccini is speaking on behalf of the Puccini Polling Group. And Amachi is speaking on behalf of Clay Cove Capital. There are other owners in this project, including the Pittsburgh Penguins and F&B. I think it's really important to note that, not to suggest that BPG shouldn't do more, because I think that we all have to raise the bar in order to get where we need to be, no question about it. But I do find it particularly curious that we have not heard from the Pens at all at this stage. And it would be great to also hear from F&B, since a lot of the commitments that are being discussed are from them specifically. So just for the sake of transparency and for everybody understanding what's going on.
Thank you, Marimba. And before we come to you, Mr. Douglas, I'm just going to grab a comment from Facebook. I'm trying to get everybody's comments in. I've got comments on Facebook as well. So we had one from Lakeisha Wolf, who said that commercial space beyond kiosks is extremely important. So just the comment. Mr. Douglas, go ahead, you're on. And then Ms. Watson, I see that you have your hand raised as well. And then I'm going to try to come back to the chat, because I think I've got like 30 more messages in here now. I'm trying to get through.
You ready for me? Oh, sorry.
It's all right, Ms. Watson. We're going to have Mr. Douglas, and then we'll be ready for you.
Yeah, I give the Hills CDC great credit for your efforts in the community over the years. Marimba, I've worked with you. Give you guys great credit. I just don't want to see things, what happened in East Liberty, happen on the Hill. It just would not like to see that happen. However, one of the things that I wanted to say is that in January, there was a request for qualifications that came out for professional services. And it came out from the development group. And I sweated bullets trying to respond to that request for professional services. And it doesn't appear to me from the discussions that I've been hearing tonight that beyond the small enclave of folks that are engaged in professional services, it almost appears as if it's a shut game. That's what it appears like to me. So I wanted to raise that question and find out, is there really a true intent to engage other professionals like civil engineers? My firm provides that service. I submitted on that request for qualifications, but I'm just hearing construction And great, I like that, but there are professional people beyond the small enclave that has already been kind of selected. That's my question.
You're absolutely
I
right.
haven't- Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that was my question. I haven't seen anything. And trust me, I sweated to get that proposal in.
And your work, I'll just be fair in saying, without going too far, that I've seen it, and we're going to have some conversations about it. Okay, I can't say much more than that, but it speaks to where we are in terms of our phasing. We want to be able to, and we will be holding a more detailed conversation with the community about the phased opportunities and the open call for those professional services to be welcome to the site. We want to hear from you. We want to receive your proposals. We want to engage you. We're very serious about that. This is not lip service. So while we're close to moving to our next phase with regard to mobilization, we are not done. You'll be hearing from me, Mr. Douglas, and that's not just to you. I want to also make my email available to anyone that has questions. I'm at bhowze, BHOWZE, at bpgroup.net. You can also go to our website at www.lowerhillredevelopment.net. You can get a lot of information there. We're very serious about this. This is one of my most personal goals, to make sure that we have as many Black companies on the site participating, that they have the support that they need, the representation that they need. We'll be marching down the road with you. This is not going to be one of those projects where it gets passed off to the construction company and they go about business as usual. It is not just BPG who is doing this. We are in partnership with the Executive Management Committee, who is chaired by Councilman Lavelle, and Marimba Malyans, who has been a good steward of the project with regard to making sure that we're accountable to the CSIP goals. We have a lot of work to do. We're rolling up our sleeves, and we have the common goal of making sure that we have the highest MBE participation on this project in the city's history.
Thank you, Bomani. All right, Ms. Watson, you are up, and then I'm going to go back to the chat. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Ms. Felicity. And good evening, everyone. And it's a beautiful project, a beautiful plan, and good to see you, Bomani and Dr. Ellis and Howard Graves. Good to see that you all are on that side of the plan, trying to get things done for the community. My question is, I heard someone say, and also the gentleman from Wharton, the scholarly gentleman. I apologize, I don't know your name, but someone said, one of you gentlemen said that you already signed the CSIP. Someone else said, I will sign it. So signed or not signed already, is that document going to be presented as an attached document to any development plan going into the Planning Commission? If it's not attached and you ask us to just have faith that you will go through with all the things that you've offered, then we as a community have no method of enforcing the terms that you put forth to us and tell us that you're going to do. And I, as the prior or past planning commissioner, not only the commissioner, the chair of both the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Adjustment for 8 years, I know, and I promise you, that if the document is not attached, the CSIP or any community benefits or community agreement, if it's not attached, it will not be paid attention to. It has no legal enforcement, not at the commission and not when you go to court. So please tell us that you're going to attach this document. That's the important aspect. Additionally, we're not talking about housing yet, but I imagine that housing is going to be a part of this. And so I want you to think about this in advance, that when you're doing housing and you all get all your various tax funding situations, whether it's TIFs or whatever the other possibilities are, and you offer affordable housing and a percentage of that, there's always, in my experience, a end date when that affordable housing goes away, and then all of the units become market rate. That is long-term gentrification of the community. So please consider, or not consider, please make certain that when you do affordable housing, it's forever. Otherwise, it doesn't really benefit our community. It's a temporary benefit. Thank you. That's all. God bless you all.
Watson, thank you for that. I hope it's Judge Watson, because I'm just looking at your name here on the screen. I will be. Members of our ownership, which is the former COO of the Penguins, signed the CSIP, which is binding to us. Us being Amici from Clay Cove, FNB, Puccini Poland, and Penguins, all of us. The CSIP is binding to all of us. And again, it takes a village to build a project of this magnitude, and it'll take years and years and years to build it out. We are not the residential developer. There's a separate firm who is taking the lead on the first residential, of which Bomani is a part of separately. But our ownership, the CSIP is binding to us and has been signed. We also signed a term sheet for Block E, which is the garage and the Live Nation. And so we've just now submitted a term sheet for Block G1/G4, the tower and the plaza. And that is something we would like to sign, once we know that the community is on board with that, or if they were to get on board with that. And so I can't speak to the housing, but I do know that there are affordable components to that last for some time. It's not something we're working on.
Thank you. Can I respond to that, Felicity?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Ms. Watson.
Okay. Yes, sir. So, and I appreciate you hearing the housing component. That was kind of like dealing with what I know to be future development. But right now, the important thing is, you said you've signed the CSIP, and apparently that there are CSIPs for each one of these various developments. You signed them and you are bound to them, but we need them as a community to be attached and presented at the Planning Commission level. When you go to the Planning Commission, these documents need to be attached to your development documents and become a part of the record at the Planning Commission level. That's really the important aspect of what I talked about in this moment. And that's what I want you to take home and to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Duly noted.
Thank you. Alrighty, I'm going to go back to a message here in the chat. We have one from Tim Stevens. So to the point, I think that some of you all have from the development team have made earlier. If you are looking for comfort and buy-in from the RCO, the DRP, Hill District citizens, organizations, and supporters in terms of your commitments, why would you go to the Pittsburgh Planning Commission before getting buy-in from all of these partners? Are you in position to get solid written commitments for implementation of all that has been committed over the past several years, and to have the Penguin commitments solidified? There's a history here of too many broken promises. And to a point that was made earlier, I don't think anybody addressed a question previously that asked about the previous unfulfilled commitments. What is the status of those items as well?
So as it relates to the timing today, why we're here today, we have been working on this project for 2 years at Puccini Poland. We were brought in about 2 years ago, and we completely reimagined the master plan. And actually, it was at that meeting where I met Bomani, my new partner, who was the most vocal in the entire meeting, that Vaki had run for us. And we created at BPG, what we do is we typically come in to projects that have been long stalled, like this one, and we try to take a very big, complicated project and create smaller, I don't want to call them bite-sized pieces because these are not bite-sized, but smaller pieces, and try to attack those pieces one by one. And so We do have a signed lease with Live Nation, but we have been waiting to start that project because we want to build that with a parking garage, but we need an office tower to help fill that garage. And so we've been working for over a year with FMB to move in this tower. And when COVID hit in March, it just brought everything to a complete halt. And everyone it's no surprise around the world, everyone is rethinking the way they work for forever. I know a lot of you probably are working from home like so many people. And so it was after FMB was able, it's a publicly traded company, and they were able to get their board of directors comfortable. It was okay, we can do this and we will do this, but we have to have it built by a certain date or financially we can't do it. And I will say this about FMB, I don't know of another company that would be making such a massive investment in their hometown. And the reason I respect them so immensely is because of the CEO and the bank's hometown pride. If you didn't have a CEO who grew up in this community, he would never be making this kind of bet on the future of their business, especially when they're growing in a very big way in the Southeast. That's where all their growth is. So we have one tenant, which lets us build a big tower, which the benefit to the community is the bigger the tower, the larger the LRTA, the larger the tax base. So the bigger the project, the beneficiary, the community is a 50% beneficiary of that size. And so when they came back to us, and literally it was December 23rd that we had final approval with them to provide the financing and the lease and an equity investment, that was January, February, that was 2.5 months ago. And so we are sprinting to make this project a reality. In addition to that, we also have, as many of you may know, interest rates going up by the day. And the interest rates are expected to continue to go up, which could ultimately kill this project. I don't want to get too off track here, but they're just these are the kind of massive headwinds that are pushing us, that are in our face right now. I'm just trying to be transparent about why we're here and why we're here and why we're hoping to go to the Planning Commission in April, end of April.
Thank you, Chris. I just wanted to add some clarification comments that I put in the chat, because as typical Hill City EC, we try to educate our community along with presentations. To Ms. Watson's comment, just for clarity about why that was so important, when the Hill CDC sued previously, Marimba gave this history at the beginning of the presentation. She talked about the settlement agreement that created the LRTA, the tax revenue, that created the housing, what led to the Housing Opportunity Fund, those items. That was because the development team had refused to attach the CSIP or any agreements to the Planning Commission plan. So that's, again, just tying some of that history together there. And then related to the CSIP, I think this is important to talk about. I put this in the comments, the legal standard. So legal standard is the way in which a document is read. Unfortunately, legal documents don't work where if you just say, you said you're going to do it, it's binding. There's usually a legal standard for how binding is it, or how much work do you have to do to do it. And so the CSIP legal standard is called commercially reasonable efforts. And so that's about in the middle of legal standards. There's good faith efforts, which is the base. There's commercially reasonable standards, which is in the middle. And then there's best efforts, which is the highest standard, legal standards you can get. And so basically, commercially reasonable efforts means what it says. Is it commercially reasonable for the developer to meet these commitments? And so that's the standard of the CSIP agreement. Just wanted to clarify that as well. I know that we are getting
I'd like to add really quickly, Felicity, I'd like to add that the Penns have already utilized the commercially reasonable standard as an out to proceed on with the term sheet that was signed with the URA due to COVID. We all understand that these are extraordinary circumstances, but I think it is important to note that that has already been employed relative to meeting the timeline that was agreed upon in the URA term sheet.
Thank you. I also had a request that I received to share in the chat, the article in Bloomberg about the census tract change, which we have not, the development team has not talked about, or we have not talked about too much this evening, but that's in the chat as well for anybody. Let me see, I'm sorry, I'm trying to go through because we are going to have to wrap pretty soon. I wanted to see if there were any burning questions that had not been addressed through some of the other conversation discussions that we did have. Let's see. I think most of these have been covered. Is there anybody that has a burning question that wants to raise their hand before we wrap this evening? We are, almost an hour over. I do see Kim. Go ahead, Kim. Unmute yourself and ask your question. Want to make sure we get enough time in for questions, though. Oh, and I see another hand. Give me 1 second.
Yes, I had asked in the chat. I had heard that one of the developers say that they had previously had one of these projects prior to this one. I want to know, can they give us a neighborhood, an urban neighborhood, where they did a project like this before? They came into the neighborhood and it benefited the neighborhood, the community.
Miss Williams, this is Chris Puccini. I would love to bring people to Wilmington, Delaware, my hometown, and I think it's a project. It's a city that for the last 20 years we have continued to make additional investments in, and I would gladly give you the last 3 mayors of Wilmington, the last 3 heads of city council. Bomani he's met with members of city council. He's met with the mayors. I've worked with President Biden. I've worked with our senators. I've worked with everyone there. And we're incredibly proud of what we've been able to accomplish, whether it was building 2 schools, or whether it was creating affordable housing, whether it was creating market rate housing, that anywhere from 50 to 60% of the total residential was people of color, whether it was the largest grocery store in the middle of a food desert. That probably the thing that I am most proud of in my entire career was building this grocery store and convincing people. I built a live music venue which brings thousands of kids every single year in for free music education on a foundation that I created. The same is true of our sports. We've really, the city of Wilmington, the entire city has been sort of a learning ground for us, which is one of the things I think that excites us the most. I've created 900 jobs in the city of Wilmington for people from the community that had stared for decades at the office towers that were more banks and law firms and chemical companies. We were able to create jobs for people that were in the 20-minute walk that Baki had talked about earlier. So would love to host people there. I've offered to every government leader locally to have people come online who will tell you that we've always done what we said we were going to do.
Just wanted to add on to that very briefly. I did take a trip out to Wilmington because I didn't want to just hear the talking points about what was done. This is prior to me coming on board with BPG. Chris drove me around. Actually, I took my own walk. Actually, I did my own tour because I want to hit the back alleyways and the cuts. So I took my own tour by foot and walked up and down, I guess the main drag. It's a lot like Center Avenue. It reminds me of Center Avenue, where we've gone 24 years without a grocery store, and then we got one and then lost it. It had a theater like the New Granada Theater called the Queen Theater that you always see President Biden going in and out of, small shops, restaurants, some of the same struggles of Black businesses being destroyed through redlining, and then there's a need for some investment capital and developers to come through and rebuild it. And so I encourage, don't take my word for it. I've talked with Marimba about this. I told her that I think we should do some of what we did maybe 10 years ago to some communities in Philly. We should go and take a trip and ask the questions. How did you fund this? How did you capitalize this? How's it going? What worked? What failed? And ask the really hard questions so that you can assess for yourself to see whether this is something that we can do here. So I put that out there to the leadership here at the CDC to let's look into it to those developments.
Thank you, Bomani.
We had quick Felicity. Sorry, I just wanted to say real quick that I second Bomani's emotions. Before I came on, I just serendipitously was in Delaware visiting my girlfriend who actually used to live in the Hill District. And when I realized that I was so close, I decided to go and see for myself. And I was really struck by the similarity between the downtown and their Hill District, basically, and the neighborhood. And, I just think that one thing that needs to be made clear is that the distrust is earned. Everybody knows it. We all know this history, and the only reason why I signed on is because there were promises made and that they were very, very clear about meeting and exceeding the CSIP and actually going with the signed documents. And so I think perhaps what's not being said is what was happening in the past versus how they stepped in to repair. And that's what you're seeing now. And that's what you're seeing now with Bomani's involvement and his leadership. That's what you're seeing now with my involvement and things like that. They didn't start off on the right foot. Everybody knows that. And I do think that there is one part that's slightly disingenuous that we need to address, which is that the presentation to the DRP, where the term sheet was gone over and there were very specific things. And Chris, I still think you or Bomani should go over at least 3 or 4 of those things in the term sheet tonight, because the community did not hear that. So that's why the community is saying, oh, this sounds flowery, but where's the real commitment? It's in the term sheet. And that was presented to the DRP. And the reason why it was presented to the DRP and in such a way is because they thought, that in meeting all of these qualifications, that it would then get a much higher score. And then Marimba, did say that a part of the low score was the rush, that they feel, insulted by the rush. So this timing and the low score, they're not really compatible. And so if you think that you're going to get a better DRP score, then yeah, you plan the next meeting and you say, okay, I'm ready to have a community meeting and I'm ready to move on to planning. And so I do think going over some aspects of the term sheet, even tonight, for the community to see what was in it is real, because the question that I want you to answer is, does the community have to rely on word of mouth promises, or are there contractual signed obligations that are legally binding? That is what we want to know. That's what they want to know. And that's why I signed on. So I just wanted to say that.
Can I just say one thing really, really briefly, Kim? Thank you very much. I do want to be clear, though, that we did not tell the developers what to put in their presentation this evening. So if the development team felt that it was priority to go over those commitments rather than reviewing the architectural design and in the open space design, that is something that they could have prioritized in the meeting this evening. I also want to highlight that term sheet, which was presented to the DRP, still received those E and F failing scores when aligned with the specific action item commitments from the CSIP. One of the things that has been a challenge in this process has been that the development team has grouped their commitments, which are great. I think there are some really great commitments in there under just overarching headers of the focus areas of the CSIP, rather than aligning them to the specific action items. So for people that are not familiar with the CSIP, under minority and business inclusion, there's 17 action items. Under some of the other items, there's another 17 action items. And so while we think that there is certainly some meat here and that this is a start, it's still falling very short when aligned against those specific action items. I just wanted to be clear, in that information this evening. I do know that Sam wanted to be unmuted to make a comment as well. So Chris, I'm going to let you respond, and then we're going to go, and we are unfortunately going to have to wrap. So I'm going to cover next steps as well.
Thank you, Felicity. And listen, I'm going to tell you this. I'm a human being. I'm trying my best. All right. I am trying my best to listen. And I think in most meetings, I say, I'm here to listen, and I hear you. And so I appreciate all this feedback that we're getting. The reason we did not focus on the term sheet, quite frankly, tonight it was, I think, our understanding that tonight, in preparation for the Planning Commission, it was important to go over what we went over today. And so, my thought was that I don't know if it's the Hill CDC or who would share the term sheet of once Felicity, you all had a chance to review it. So I did want to respect protocol and process here, but the reason why I personally wrote this term sheet was because I listened and I heard and I said, wait a second, why don't we just have this on like one really big 11 by 17 piece of paper that could dissect that it was all right there, because people wanted to see the meat of what was going on. And I'm disappointed that it's upon review still falls well short, because it includes a huge investment relative to the size of the project and based upon what we can do. And so Boris has it up, and we'll figure out a way to make it public of what we're trying to do here. But it starts with the 50% share of the LRTA. We are getting a loan from FNB to monetize it day one, so that the community can have the money day one, and we are responsible for the next 11 years of paying back that loan. And there's probably $250,000 of cost associated with just the documentation and the legal and the title and things of that nature that we show here. This tower allows for us to build the parking garage next door that will throw off $3 million estimated of parking revenue to the Greater Hill Housing Stabilization Fund. So we have no control over that, of how that money's spent, but it will be controlled by the Greater Hill Housing Stabilization Fund. FMB has been committed to the Hill, but will remain committed to the Hill and further invest in the Hill. I literally don't think the Hill could have a better corporate neighbor than FNB. One, because of their hometown pride and their care for the community, but also because they are a bank. And so there are an incredible amount of things that they are doing, but will continue to do even more. And while it is true that they do have CRA goals to make, there are many different neighborhoods they can do it. And they do care deeply about this community. So much so that we highlight, they're already participating in the Center Avenue YMCA project with historic tax credits, construction loans, and grants. And that's to the tune of about 17 million. I'm just trying to give a little bit. We've created a fund of $400,000, of which we actually, as the ownership, that's Clay Cove, BPG, Penguins, FNB, will have 400,000 to go into the community and make small grants to people that the hardest dollars in getting a project done, like Big Tom's Barbershop, for instance, helping bridge those last dollars that need for them to make their financing work. And so we've got 400,000 of grant money that we're in discussions with to put into the community. The focus area one, the MWBE inclusion, is something I'm incredibly proud of, and something we probably spend more time than anything figuring out. Yes, if we are going to start construction this summer, how do we get people mobilized to work on our project, the people that we want to give opportunity to? And we're very proud of pre-development of the 5 million of contracts, the percentage that have been awarded to either people from the community or people of color and women. you know, and so we go on for, is it 9 points? I don't, yeah, 7 focus points.
Yeah,
But these are the kinds of things that in detail we are, you know, that we are trying to share with leadership in the community as well as the community at large.
Yeah,
Thank you, Chris, for covering that.
Chris,
let me just
a big part of what we also spend time on right now is the community open space, and to have Dr. Ellis involved has been so much more important than I ever could have imagined, especially because she always pushes me. She's like, Chris, no, you got to do more. She's constantly riding me hard, which I love. And I think that's what's going to make this project is we have leadership of the Hill CDC who's pushing, and everyone's pushing. And Bomani will be to say that's what's going to make this a great project at the end of the day. So thank you very much. I recognize it's late. We're going on 3 hours.
Yeah.
And we appreciate all the time that the dam has given us tonight to present and answer questions. And we will be following up with also, I think, some written responses as well to further clarify issues.
I just
Thank
wanted
you,
to
Chris.
reiterate
Hold
that.
on, Bomani, hold on. Bomani, for 1 second, please, because I really want to be mindful.
But we're not
Bomani?
satisfied. We're pushing to make sure that we make deeper dives into the community commitments that we're making. This is not just a BPG project. We have several organizations that are around the table to make this happen. We have the leadership of Councilman Lavelle and the rest of the city council. So I want to take a moment to thank him and the leadership that he's been providing, not only on council, not only with the URA, but also with the Executive Management Committee, that is the overarching monitor organization. The URA and the SEA are around the
I just want to make sure I jump in here on making sure that residents have an opportunity to ask their final questions. And we're really running tight on time. So I want to make sure that we have that opportunity. Claudia and Arby, if you guys could rapid fire your
But I think he's
questions.
still talking. Did you mute him?
Oh, is he muted?
I think you muted him.
Oh, I'm not sure what happened.
My question is simple. Hey, everybody. Once the terms come, if they come to terms, if we come to terms,
I'll just very quickly reiterate that this is a very large collaborative effort. This is not just BPG.
Hey,
we have around the table the
Claudia was talking.
CSIP, the Community Collaborative Implementation Committee. I'm sorry, Community Collaborative Implementation Executive Management Committee, who is the overarching monitor group that is represented by the appointees from the mayor's office, from Councilman Lavelle's office, and then also from the community on behalf of the Hill CDC. We're in regularly, weekly contact with them, and we're making sure that we're going to be good stewards of this. We also want to acknowledge the Councilman Lavelle's office, who this is pretty much the crown jewel of all the projects that he's working on within District 6. I thank you for your leadership. And I also want to acknowledge Deputy Director Diamante Walker, who is at the URA, another Hill District resident who has her eyes on this and leaning and putting her influence from her position. Obviously, the Hill CDC has been leading the charge with regard to revitalization of the Hill District. We're in constant communications with Marimba and the rest of her team. E-Holdings, who is a vetting organization, also a Hill District-based business, who is helping us to receive those MBEs that are interested in working on the project. That's Irv Williams and Janae Williams. We also have the Dunham Group, the Open Space Advisory Group, Partners for Work, who is a workforce organization helping us to get the First Source Center up and running. Riverside Center for Innovation with regard to the business support for training on bidding and estimating. And then we have a commitment with PJ Dick, who has also signed on to the CSIP, who is going to be the builder of the tower. So this is a big collaborative effort. And I didn't even name all of the organizations. But again, you can reach me directly. I'm Vice President for Development for Puccini Polling Group, the Greater Pittsburgh area. My email address is bhowze, BHOWZE, at bpgroup.net. And you can also get information about the site at the www.lowerhillredevelopment.net.
All right, thank you, Bomani.
Thank you so much.
Unfortunately, there were community members that were trying to speak at the same time, and I know you're having issues with your Zoom. So I hope someone from your development team was sending you messages to let you know that, since they can hear.
Hey, I just want.
One second.
Okay.
I gotta bring order. Sorry, we had an order of speakers for us to, before we wrap on next steps. So I'm sorry, we had Sam, Arby, and then you, Claudia. Please be as brief as you possibly can. I know we're trying to maximize community members' time to speak. Go ahead, Sam, you're up first.
Thanks, Felicity. So what I was saying in the comments, it just seems very disingenuous, the presentation. You know, like it seems like you guys are trying really hard to connect with us, and what we're really asking for is not the things that you guys are addressing, right? There are a lot of community concerns around the project itself, but you keep trying to sell us on, you know, hometown heroes and things. And I understand that there is a lot of organizations that aren't doing great things for the Hill District, but that's not the standard, right? And so whenever you come to us comparably, that's not, for myself, I will speak for myself, comparably speaking, this isn't good, right? Like, this is not the standard for the Hill District. And I completely understand that, you know, FMB is a hometown hero. You know, you guys do a lot of work, but, you know, like today I was reading the report. I was reading a very, you know, detailed report on, you know, how many loans, right? Like how many loans go to Black people in Pittsburgh, and FMB wasn't at the top of that list. So I'm not necessarily saying that you guys are doing, you're doing anything wrong, but the approach was completely, I think it was disingenuous, because it was not, you're not talking to us as if we're intelligent people. We're not children. We understand how this process works. We do this process, you know, several times. We understand how development works. I don't need you to provide me Bomani House's backstory of how he grew up in the hood. I don't need that. I need tangible things in the contract that people are asking for, that community members are asking for. Even circumventing the process is kind of, you know, insulting, right? Like, circumventing the process is completely insulting, because the process is there for a specific reason. Community members agreed on a specific process. And when you go about it this way and then tell us like, oh, we're the hometown heroes, it's kind of insulting. So Again, I appreciate the project, but the standard is not PNC. It's just not.
Thank you. All right, Arby, you are up next. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, Arby. There you go.
Hello,
You're unmuted.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Arby Bankston. The presentation doesn't address the key part of the Hill, which is people. So brick and mortar, brick and mortar, brick and mortar. Okay, yes, we do need the former Civic Arena site to be redeveloped. However, there are some things that need to be addressed, and the people are not being addressed. So in the chat, I had a couple questions, primarily about people. So right now, there are several unfulfilled commitments that are not being addressed. In 2019, PAR Penguins committed $1 million to rehab Ammons, reduced it to $100,000 in 2021. That's one item that's not being addressed. Another item, and I'm trying to go as fast as I can. Another item is residents. So residents in the Hill, we have maybe 10,000 of the 60,000 when I grew up back in the 60s. So there's no effort to bring them back. They want to close. The Pittsburgh Public Schools wants to close Miller School. So no education. We don't have a shop and save or grocery store. There needs to be what do you call them? Trying to go real fast. Studies, marketing studies and things of that nature to be done to understand if a business is going to work and how to help people put businesses. We don't have a bakery. We don't have a dry cleaner. We don't even have a 7-Eleven. So we need a schedule, a timeline that these unfulfilled commitments are going to be met. They're in the chat. It needs to be attached to the term sheet. The lady brought up a great point that if it's not attached to the term sheet and presented to the URA board, then it's another unfulfilled commitment. We don't have a schedule. We don't have a timeline. We don't have, however you choose to characterize it, of these unfulfilled commitments. For instance, Block B went before the URA board in 2019. It's now on pause. So what about the terms within that term sheet? When will they be fulfilled? So you guys need to provide that. It needs to be attached to the term sheet that's presented to the URA, the planning commission, however the process works. And the last thing you mentioned, Crawford Street being a barrier. There's nothing that I've seen that incentivizes anybody to walk past Crawford Street into what used to be a business corridor along Wiley Avenue. There's an emphasis on building a business corridor on Center Avenue, but the Hill had 3 business corridors when I grew up: Huron Avenue, Wiley, and Center. There's nothing that says how are we going to bring those back? How are we going to bring residents that were displaced from the Hill back to the Hill? All those things need to be addressed. Brick and mortar is fine. The project is needed for the city of Pittsburgh. The opportunity zone, for instance, it's going to affect the AMI. The AMI is a 5-year rolling average. So 5, 6, 7 years from now, you talk about opportunity zone in Delaware. Well, created in 2017, hasn't been 5, 6, 7 years since it's been completed. So there's no data. So how is that going to affect the residents of the Hill when the AMI rises and they can't qualify for federal or state, however, those programs that would help residents in their homes? They're not going to qualify. All those things need to be addressed. Please do so. Great presentation on brick and mortar. It's falling short on people. Thank you.
Can I jump in now, Felicity, or no?
I was scared. I mute myself and say, go ahead, Claudia, and then I'm going to wrap us up with next steps.
All right. So thank you, Sam, and thank you, Brother AB. Basically, with the commitments that have been done in the past and the failed promises, obviously there's a whole bunch of new commitments being done now. I would love to identify, or I want to hear someone say, not only are we going to get better with the terms, because everything is doable. Everything that I've heard from the community is actually doable. So it's not like rocket science. 1, 2, I would love to hear someone say, yes, the terms will be made public and the terms will be attached as a legal document when it goes before, so that it can be used in the court of law when promises. Lastly, I would love to see a milestones and metrics calendar that is made public. So as we hit different milestones and different metrics, the community or the public can hold you accountable. And I believe that the community is ready for development. But I believe that, this is only a fraction of what the community, which is way before me, is actually due. You know what I mean? So, and I would love for us as a community to also hear from the Penns and First National. So right now we have a part of the investment team and the development team, but I would love to hear from the horse's mouth of a lot of which made initial promises that have not been met. So that's why we would love to see it public. We would love to see it attached as a legal document. And we need to hear that today, that's the kind of commitment we need. So then we can hold each other accountable throughout the milestones and metrics as each date comes up. We're like, okay, where's this at? Okay, we go back to court. And those are the kind of things that I would love to hear and see from this development team.
All righty. Thank you, Claudia. As I said, we do have to wrap up the meeting. We are over an hour over, but I know that this conversation has been so important. Want to make sure that you guys got a lot of opportunity to ask questions. I did want to note that there is a article in the chat about the impact of opportunity zones in Delaware. In fact, actually including the BPG development, a review of some thoughts on what that has done to the community. So feel free to look at that. We'll also make sure that we share that under this meeting on our Facebook. Want to talk about some next steps. So next steps this evening. What will happen, what will come up next? As we said, this meeting has to take place at least 30 days prior to a planning commission hearing. That means that the development team will be going to the planning commission within a minimum of 30 days. There are 2 levels to the planning commission. So there is first a briefing. They generally do not take public comment at that time. There will then be the actual presentation at which the planning commission would make a decision about whether to approve this plan or this proposal. That meeting, there will be the ability to also give public comment. Fasting, I think I just made that up. I'm a little tired. Fast forwarding. There will also need to be approvals sought from the URA and the SEA in order to actually transfer ownership of the land, which the public agencies currently hold. So we'll expect for some of those board meetings to be coming down the road as well. Of course, as I said, we just received that legal document, the term sheet, on Friday. So we will all be reviewing that document to sufficiently review and give comment and feedback. We, of course, continue to keep you guys informed and engaged. If you aren't already a part of our email list, please do so by getting connected at www.hilldistrict.org/sign up. And so we can't keep in touch with you unless you complete that form. We also encourage you to follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. As I keep saying, we're not on TikTok yet, but we're working on it. We can have some fun Hill District TikToks. So we will continue to keep you guys updated, stay engaged. Again, as those critical dates come up, we will continue to let you all know what those dates are. We thank everybody for attending tonight. We thank the development team for presenting this evening, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon, at least virtually, in the Hill District. So thank you all.
I just want to wrap up by saying I am so incredibly proud of the Hill District. For you all to show up at 190 plus people just shows that we are forever committed to our neighborhood. We are still at 117 people at 9/22. So shout out to the Hill District for always stepping in and protecting its own interests. Really respect.
I just wanted to make one correction, if I may. I made a mistake in the ending. That's the site that I'd like you to go to for more information is www.lowerhillredevelopment.com, not .net. So small correction. And I want to thank you all again. Thank you, Marimba. Thank you, Felicity, for facilitating this meeting. We have a lot of work ahead of us. And we're very seriously committed to it. And we're accessible. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you and working with you all down the road.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Have a good evening, everybody. Good night.
Bye-bye.